OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, very good morning to you. Very welcome along. It's Tuesday morning. It's 7:30. Shane is here.
Good morning. Happy Pancake Tuesday.
Oh, I forgot about that. Colm is here as well.
Hi, Ger. Hi, Shane.
No pancakes.
No pancakes. I know we should have had something. Are you a big pancake fan?
Bad production. Are you saying you're not a pancake fan?
I am, yeah. I made that joke.
What kind of monster are you?
I said I was. I'm asking
I
are
wouldn't
you.
like them. But who isn't?
I'd say that. Anyone in there? Out there? Who doesn't like pancakes? Let us know.
What way do you like them?
Always. That's it. There are many different types of pancake, and they're all equally acceptable.
Shrove Tuesday.
Just a bit of Googling there. Will you make them this evening in the Gilroy household?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you know? Here's a fun fact, guys. The Royal Shrovetide football match is a medieval football game played annually on Shrove Tuesday and Ash Wednesday in the town of Ashburn in Derbyshire, England.
Right. Not
Played in
interesting.
England since at least the 12th century.
Keep your royalist nonsense away from this show, Shane.
There you go. Medieval football.
Can you give us a review of the latest episode of The Crown there while you're at it?
No, funny enough, I don't watch The Crown. Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting.
Thank
Fair
you.
play. I thought that added something. Yeah. Would you make pancakes in the Hannon?
I usually throw them in the toaster or something.
But they're not made. They're
Yeah, you
bought.
can. Yeah, you
Yeah,
bought.
but
You can make them from scratch.
The
Creeps.
not
now.
acceptable.
I forgot the part where you buy the pancakes and then all of a sudden they don't become pancakes.
Not
Do
acceptable.
they not count?
They don't count.
They do count, of course.
No,
they do.
they don't count.
So I can't cook.
Again, there's no cooking involved. It's like the easiest thing in the world.
Believe me, you can butcher pancakes.
You can't. Yeah, honestly. Yeah, I mean,
What do you do?
really,
You put the. So talk me through it.
I mean, you mix all the stuff together. You whip it into a batter.
Right.
You make your pan a little bit hot. You put a bit of butter in it.
See, already there's too many steps.
And you've climbed mountains and not died.
100%. But you know, the food was made for me up Kilimanjaro. Thankfully.
How do you eat every day?
How do I eat? So I usually put it in my mouth, but I would say no. I get a lot of the ready-made fit foods. Do you know the fit foods kind of?
No, I don't.
You stick it in the microwave for 4.5 minutes.
Right, and that's it.
So I eat a lot of good fruit. I eat quite healthily. Eat a lot of protein and.
How? In what form?
I use protein powder. I use creatine and things like that.
That's
to
not healthy.
supplement it. Well, like
That's not how-
with a balanced diet.
If you were to say I eat chicken.
Well, I eat a lot of chicken. I eat fish.
How do you cook it?
Peanuts.
Who cooks it for you?
Who cooks it? It's a good question.
Do you buy it ready
I
cooked?
buy it. Yeah.
So you go somewhere where they fry it in fat.
Yeah.
That's also
yeah.
not healthy.
I know.
Wow. Okay.
But I do a lot of exercise, if that helps.
Well, it offsets a little bit,
I read books.
but there'll be a point. There'll be a point where that stops offsetting.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, we went down a dark and lonely path there. How are you all this morning? Just a couple of things. Obviously, Liverpool play Manchester United tonight, and
Real Madrid.
Liverpool play Real Madrid tonight, and Rafa Benitez is hanging around like a bad smell. Have you noticed this just recently?
Yeah, he's commenting on everything.
Just emerging from his chrysalis. He was in China for ages. He somehow managed to turn that into a story about Bacetich in the papers today. So he's got a column in the Times, I think, and he's doing interviews. And he's made it clear that he's interested in David Moyes' job, none of the other jobs that are available and free at the moment, which are crap jobs, basically, because you're more than likely going to go down. But like Rafa, whose most recent stint in English football wasn't that good, was it? It didn't seem to be much of a success.
Nah.
No. People are blaming Everton for picking him. Oh, it was their fault that he was no good.
Is Rafa a bit of a snake?
And maybe it was their fault that he was a bit of that he wasn't no good. But maybe he's just no good anymore.
I don't like the fact that he's eyeing up Moyes' job when he's still in the job. And I know Liverpool fans won't like the fact that he went to Everton as well. That's a bit snaky, like. Isn't it?
I mean, I think if West Ham pick Rafa Benitez, then fair play to you, West Ham. You deserve everything that's coming your way. I also think that somebody was making the point yesterday that of all the managers who are available at the moment for a relegation battle, David Moyes is the best available. We're going to speak with Mark Lawrenson a little bit later on about this. That's why I was bringing this up. But like, Rafa is also kind of, he's the Forrest Gump of modern football in his columns. It's like, oh, Sergio Ramos used to say these things to me when I was at Real Madrid. I'm like, I mean, again, how successful was his time at at Real Madrid. And then obviously he's talking about the last time that he remembers being in charge for Liverpool Real Madrid when Casillas was man of the match and Liverpool won 4-0 and they crushed them. But it's a long time ago. It's not. It wasn't last decade. It was the decade before that.
His managerial career is kind of akin to Robert De Niro's acting, isn't it? Where he had this kind of peak time, Valencia, Liverpool, what he achieved at those clubs.
I know you're not about to diss Robert De Niro.
And then, De Niro had this like pretty much flawless CV, and then at the turn of the century started doing stuff for money, basically. And Benitez, since he left Liverpool, has kind of gone from one job to the other. I mean, he went to Inter when they had just won the treble under Mourinho and was gone within a few months, and got the Real Madrid job, was gone within a few months. And ever since then he's been bouncing from club to club. Now, he did have that good spell at Newcastle,
Was
which
it
is
good?
what.
Was it good?
Yeah,
I
he
mean, they
did. Yeah, the
avoided
fans
relegation.
loved them. The fans loved them. They
But
got
was
back
it
up.
good though?
He brought them back up from the Championship.
Was it good though? Like, was it really
Well,
good?
what you mean?
Was
Well,
it,
it's
like,
obviously not
was he-
compared to now, but it was since 1996 under Kevin Keegan. It was probably the brightest time that they had, and maybe a bit of Bobby Robson in 2003.
Was the football not terrible? Was everyone not complaining
Well,
about
I think
football
that the
being
moment that-
absolutely...
I think at that time they just wanted kind of practical results.
So it wasn't good. It was just, it was mildly successful. But given the size of the club, like, yeah, you have to, yeah, I think it was grand. It was like, it meets expectations. It wasn't good. Like,
It was well, the results were decent. I think that constituted good at the time for Newcastle. He did well at Newcastle. That's what I mean by good.
I'd say he did.
I mean,
okay. Competition wasn't exactly fierce.
I don't remember the football being stodgy or terrible at the same time.
I think it was.
But I wasn't inspired by it. But I mean, how many teams are you inspired by?
Well, certainly talking to Newcastle journalists at the time, they were like, Rafa keeps saying he's got no money. In fairness, he didn't have a huge amount of money, but like, it was the football that you would expect from him. It was the same football that was played at Everton. Like,
yeah, I mean,
no good, not very interesting.
I mean, it's interesting if he played the same football twice and got completely different results.
But they weren't completely different results. They were
Well, but
almost exactly
Newcastle,
the
he
same.
did really well for a long time,
How-
and at Everton he didn't do well.
Well, did he do really well?
Yeah, for where Newcastle were at the club at the time.
But where did they finish?
But he got them back up when they were in dire straits.
Okay, I think we're splitting hairs here. I don't think Rafa Benitez has been a good manager. I think you're right, since the early stages of his career, and for whatever reason, he just lost it. Now, I'm sure that Liverpool fans think very highly of Rafa because he delivered a little oasis of incredible success and one of the all-time great moments in the club. But then it petered out, and I think something broke at that point, and he has not been good since.
I always wonder, how do managers go from being, say, the mid-noughties Benitez that wins the Champions League, how do you go from that to being a bad manager? Like, I was watching a great, snooker. I was watching a snooker video with Stephen Hendry on his YouTube channel the other day with Steve Davis, and he was saying, where would you be right now at your peak in the 80s? Where would you be right now? Would you be in the top 16 players in the world? And he said he'd be in the top 8. Will Alex Ferguson be as good now as he was from 86 to 2013? Probably not.
Oh, he would, yeah.
Well, you have to deal with egos more so now than you had to back
Ferguson.
then. That's my point with Benitez as well. Managers go from being good to not being good across the course of a generation because football changes, not them.
I mean, we'll literally never get the answer to Ferguson whether he'd be good
No,
or
I
not.
know.
But I do think it's a good question because I think he got out just at the right time for Ferguson.
yeah, exactly.
I think because since 2013, like social media, the professionalism of it, I think he would dislike the influence of social media on the players and the access to the club because United, they didn't give much away in Fergie's time in the media. They would do general interviews, but they wouldn't let you have all access areas or players sharing their personal lives. Like you were saying to us last week, Marcus Rashford showed us what he did for Valentine's Day at home.
Yeah.
I think under Alex Ferguson, he'd be
hate that.
called into the office the next morning. You can't be showing people that
Fair
way.
point.
Now, Ferguson's probably biggest strength was adaptation over the years. So I'm sure he would have adapted in some way. But I do firmly believe that he got out at the exact perfect time for Ferguson's legacy to maintain, which goes back to Benitez. Had he stopped managing in about 2010, you'd be talking about one of the great...
Same with Mourinho, sure. It happens to them all.
Well,
Ancelotti maybe not.
Miguel has written about this before, that managers seem to have a peak, and I think it's sure, football changes, they don't necessarily change or adapt, or maybe they do change and they try and adapt away from their principles. I think the point about Ferguson is that he was an absolute winner and would have won in any generation and would have done whatever it takes. So if that means, if you look at his track record of bringing in wiser, smarter football brains, he took them in and learned from them, and also he was able to manage Cristiano for a period of time. He was able to manage Beckham. It didn't end brilliantly, but he certainly was able to manage Beckham, and he was there for the birth of the super celebrity footballer. So I think that he would have been totally fine in this era and every other era because he understands the human condition of wanting to win.
I think he would have been fine, but strongly disliked Beckham's activities outside of football.
Yeah, but he was able
Strongly.
to use them.
Well,
And he was able to use Cantona. Like I think there's countless examples of Ferguson. I think Ferguson would have absolutely been very successul in this or any other. I think that's the point about greatness, is that it transcends the era that it's in.
Yeah.
Like, I think. So who was saying? Was it Steve Davis was saying he would be top 8?
He was. Stephen Hendry was of the opinion that Steve Davis will be probably top 8 now if he was as good as he was in the 80s.
I think that's bollocks.
You think he'd be higher?
Well, absolutely, he'd be higher.
But the quality of snooker is same as football. The quality of football is better than the 80s.
Yeah, but he was the very best at that time. So whatever it was that he was doing to be the best at that time was what he was driven to do.
Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, Maradona now, because he's he's a little bit stocky, he wouldn't be. Absolutely. It's like,
Sports science and stuff. Yeah.
And they would have had the benefit of the sports science from the time they were 10 or 12. Like, I think that, if you were to take 1980s Steve Davis and, give him a time machine and no moments to practice, no like years of building up to the point and no years of being exposed to the players that he was coming up against the whole way, absolutely, you can see how, if you were to take Loro's team and put them out without the sports science and give them the diet and the pints and put them up against one of these teams now, but if they'd all come through the system, they'd still be the best footballers in the world, because they'd certainly be the best footballers in these islands, because they were the best footballers in these islands. Whether or not they're the best footballers in the world anymore, I don't know, because obviously the game is globalised. But
some footballers though in the 80s probably were so good because they were allowed the chance to socialise and unwind and have their few drinks before matches and stuff like that. Whereas they wouldn't survive in this day and age of, show us what you're eating, weigh yourself there this morning. Do you know, the obsession with the stats and the numbers and the GPS in the back and all that crack. Some players just wouldn't. Some great footballers in the 80s just wouldn't have that. We don't know who. Obviously, it's all hypothetical, but I don't think everyone would follow through and be great. Like, it's tough. Yeah, you mentioned like Beckham and Cantona, 2 world class footballers that Ferguson had to deal with.
That's a throwback there to
little throwback for all of you who are regular viewers. But it's an interesting hypothesis. But I think Benitez, I feel like he hasn't stopped being a good manager. Football has just moved on, maybe.
I wonder, is the ideal time to be a footballer in the 1990s if you were a high earner and one of the elite players? Because you could still kind of enjoy yourself. Oh yeah. Right? And if you look back in videos at that time, when they take off their shirts afterwards at exchange, jerseys, whatever, they're not exactly ripped. They're kind of standard bodies, almost dad bads. And yet they would be at the top of their game. And they earn a decent living. And if they invested that wisely at the time, you could still be living off that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you were probably able to go about your life and enjoy it to an extent. Now, of course, you're rich beyond your wildest dreams, but there is a price to pay.
Yeah.
Your freedom.
I do think you look at someone like Jose Mourinho, who's adapted. He's adapted, hasn't he? He's not as good as he's not like mid-noughties Chelsea Mourinho, but he's still a good football manager.
I think I haven't seen enough of his Roma team play, right? But it definitely felt like he didn't adapt in a way. It felt like he was still trying to play the same type of football and had inferior players. Like his experience at Porto is unique, remarkable, and it marks him down as something of a genius. And I think that will always be as part of his CV. But is he as impressive a character now in world football as he was then? Probably not, because I don't know, the football at Manchester United was pretty stale.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but his quality still shone at times at United. I mean, like
won a couple of trophies.
The only time that United have done better than they are at the moment since Ferguson was 2018 under Mourinho.
Yeah,
and a year before, like, he's the last manager to win trophies at United. 2017, they won the League Cup and the Europa League. That was under Mourinho as well. Yes, you probably look back in that time and be like, it wasn't too much of a success because he himself didn't seem too happy at United. Like, he lived out of a hotel, never felt like he was really settling in there, never felt like he wanted to stay there in any way long term. But you still saw the quality shone through just by historical build-up of his quality, but he lost that spark that we saw at Chelsea and Inter. With Benitez, like, I think he was great. I would describe him as a great manager in the noughties. Like, that Liverpool squad had absolutely no right to go near a Champions League final, let alone win it. And then it wasn't just that, it wasn't like a one-hit wonder. There was a reason Liverpool hired him, and that's the work he did at Valencia. So he was brilliant. But there is the De Niro comparison for me, is that he slipped off and started taking job after job. And then the more jobs you take like that, where they're a bit underwhelming, the legacy is that little bit tainted. That's for me where Benitez comes in.
And hanging around like a bad smell, trying to get David Moyes, like to cuckoo David Moyes at the moment. That's what's going on. If you want to get involved this morning, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream, youtube.com/off the ball. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you. Alison Miller is going to join us to preview the rugby from 8. Mark Lawrenson, we'll talk to him about Moyes, and we'll talk to him obviously about the Real Madrid game tonight. John Duggan's going to join us at 8:40. Tommy Rooney's going to look back on the weekend's football at 8:50. Will O'Callaghan's going to join us at 9:10, and we'll play out some Pat Nevin goodness at 9:30 this morning. Okay, so just very briefly, going to take you through some of the comments coming in. Shifty Lad's a big fan of the pancakes with peanut butter. Not a huge fan of the peanut butter and jam, but fresh out of the pan, absolutely.
Yeah, a bit of lemon and sugar, isn't it? Isn't that the classic?
He's after the West Ham job. Is that a fact? Says Jim Sullivan. I don't think anybody's mentioned Rafa, and not the facts not come through pretty quickly afterwards. Anyway, Benitez for Leeds, maybe. I think
doesn't want it.
Leeds is beneath him. He doesn't want a job where
How is Leeds beneath him though? It's a big club.
because they're going to go down. That's what he thinks. That's his assessment is West Ham are going to stay up, so I'll take that job. And they're a more stable club, more stable owners, better situation in terms of revenue.
Yeah, more resources, you'd imagine.
James McCullough says Rafa took over an expensive squad at Newcastle and took them down. They were 17th and got them relegated. Colm seems to be washing away his failure. Rafa's a brilliant manager, but it's definitely more of a cautious type, says Shane. I always remember the season 08-09 when Liverpool would have won the league if it wasn't for about 10 or 11 draws. The squad he had at Newcastle was appealing. He got Ayoze, Rondon and Almiron firing for the second half of the season. 7th best form for the last 12-15 games of a season. That's Conor Costello. I do love those little mini tables, because when Unai Emery came in, there was a period where Unai Emery had won the 3rd most points of any manager since he arrived. You're like, the reason that the season is a marathon, not a sprint, is because every game counts, including the ones at the start of the season.
It's
where
ridiculous.
Manchester United lost those games and they were absolutely terrible.
It's like Manchester United have won the title if it's played from December 12th to January 17th. Oh, great. Let's have a parade through Manchester. Let's go into St. Peter's Square with a cardboard trophy and celebrate that.
That's
ridiculous.
That's mad. No, I mean, obviously you take that. That's called form.
Yeah, but this whole United are top of that table from that period, just period moulded to shape United's form. Ridiculous.
I can't wait to see Pep managing Stoke in 15 years, says Jamie Domican. Somehow I suspect that he's made enough money and it doesn't feel... I mean, he's going to take the Brazil job and retire after that.
Football it was Groundhog Day the other day, and Neil Warnock taking over at Huddersfield. Like, these managers always come back. Like, Neil Warnock will be managing a team in 50 years and he'll be 140.
Niall Quinn's on the record saying no way would he be a footballer today. Everyone has a camera and a video in their back pocket, says Mark C. I still think from an athletic perspective, like, Niall Quinn was an incredible athlete, and so you can guarantee that one of those Premier League clubs would have had him from the time he was 14. There would have been no hurling for the Dublin Miners, and they would have turned him into Erling Haaland.
And before there were camera phones in nightclubs for footballers, Ferguson had bouncers in Manchester on payrolls. So there is always a way to find out if people
couldn't keep some of his best players out of jail, though.
Well, there is that.
It didn't always work.
No.
He found out about it a lot of times afterwards. Conor Costello says, which is good form considering all the big clubs were playing well, bar Manchester United. Sorry, that was a second part to his Newcastle one. John Indo says, crowds up in the League of Ireland, but first round of games not even given token mention yesterday. We'll remember this next time you have a debate about what's wrong with Irish football. Where's Johnny? Johnny's in on Thursday. So we will do it, then. John. Don't worry. Ferguson did it over 4 decades. I'm sure he could have managed the latest crop. Great point, John. League of Ireland slot. We will do some League of Ireland stuff. We will definitely do some League of Ireland stuff. Don't worry, it's coming.
The attendances were, what was it, remarkably high compared to what they had been the last weekend of the season last year. And then someone made the point on Twitter, if the capacity of stadiums was actually higher, the attendances would naturally be higher. The demand is there. Sometimes the stadiums can't fit the demand based on certain clubs. So I think the interest in the League of Ireland is definitely heading one direction, and it's a positive one, in my opinion. I can't support a team because I'm Monaghan United, though.
You could pick a Dublin team.
Yeah, but I could pick Bohemians because they're the closest team to me. But people always say to me, "Oh, but you not just support Dundalk?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but Dundalk are the closest team at home, but they were the biggest rivals because they were the closest team."
I mean, they were never rivals, though. They were always a division higher than you. They were always winning.
No, we played each other in Premier Division games before. I remember being at them, Ger.
Was there like when that was the season when the two divisions were merged. Is it that season?
Paddy Andrews was playing, and Brian Gartland and Roddy Collins was manager, and good times.
Yeah, but you weren't real rivals.
No, maybe for a couple of years we were rivals.
You were rivals the way, like, you know, a team is in the League Cup and, we're rivals with Manchester United. We might get drawn against them.
Maybe.
There are rumours about Dundalk and a potential new ownership stake that have emerged over the last 24 hours. Haven't stacked any of those up just yet, but if we've seen that Shelbourne were close to having a portion of the club sold for investment, so there's definitely interest in other clubs around the world buying stakes. We're seeing the situation with Waterford at the moment. We are going to talk to Johnny Walters about that in the coming weeks too. So there's an opportunity definitely for some teams around the world to come and buy some stakes and use it as a recruiting tool. So we'll see if that's good or bad in the long run. Obviously it would be better if there was ownership in local hands, but you don't always get what you want.
I look at some of the regions in Ireland that don't have a League of Ireland team, Monaghan being one of them, Tipperary, Mayo. Think of the counties that don't have a League of Ireland team at the moment, and part of me wonders, wouldn't it be great if they all had a team? But then I'm wondering, would it take away from, like, is it a good thing to have a bit of a geographical spread, like Connacht has Sligo Rovers and Galway and all these other teams? Like, do you need a county in every single, or a team in every single county / region? I don't know.
Well, this is the argument around the Irish rugby team at the moment, which we might get into. Munster fans very upset about the fact that Scott Penny got called into the squad. We'll float this with Alison Miller, but if you're a Munster rugby fan this morning and you saw the Ireland squad yesterday, give us your thoughts. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream.
With pancakes and Nutella and strawberries and coconut is the Owen Hurley recipe for a beautiful pancake.
Coconut, fresh coconut?
I don't think so.
Strawberry and Nutella is actually the best way to have pancakes. That commenter is
bacon and maple
100%.
syrup. That's
a real North American
one
way,
I
isn't
like.
it?
Yeah, bacon and maple syrup. Jeez,
But
bloated afterwards. Your day is gone. You're done. But the taste sensation
best
is there.
bacon in the world, not the American bacon.
But the American
What do you
bacon
think,
actually does look is actually very nice.
It looks
pancakes.
good, but
Is it crispy though? Whatever.
yeah,
Crispy
do whatever
is
you want,
crucial.
Shane.
Yeah.
Do what I see. If you just if you learn how to burn the bacon, you can have it as crispy as you want.
Okay.
You know, I was
Burn
wondering,
the bacon.
you see in American films, they're always topping up coffee all the time, like classic.
Yeah,
you know,
how do they?
all the time, right? And I was thinking, like, they must be wired all day. I was in America
That's
recently,
them walking
having
around all
said the aforementioned bacon and pancakes, right, with this coffee. But it's so ridiculously weak that you actually could drink this all day, no bother. It's basically brown water. Unlike the coffee we get here, which is very strong. Now, an interesting comment here by Fergus Keogh. Luck and talent both play a role in management. Had Liverpool not come back from 3-0 down in Istanbul, would Benitez still be loved? And if United hadn't won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1990, would Fergie have been sacked for finishing 13th?
It's a fair point.
History is decided by these very little yet very significant moments
My dad
throughout history.
tells me about it. My dad was on a train in London in 1980. I want to say 88 or 89, and he was going to United versus Charlton, but it was at Sellers Park. I think the Valley was getting done up, and on the way to the match, the chants from the United fans, the away fans, and Dad was one of them, was all Fergie out. Like, it was vitriol towards Alex Ferguson. This is before he'd won a trophy, of course. But this is the thing. He wouldn't have lasted in this day and age.
Turns out fans don't know diddly squat.
No.
Do they?
Well, if you go 3 or 4 years without a trophy nowadays, you don't go 3 or 4 years without a trophy. You've lost your job. So patience doesn't exist anymore in the game. That's another one.
Just a classic lemon and sugar from Emma Carroll outside. Yeah,
Fact.
that's what I grew up on. It's quite good.
Not a big fan of the lemon and sugar. Don't like it.
I think the maple syrup and bacon is the one to go.
We've been busy, Ger. So fans of the show, do you want to set this one up, Colm?
Yeah, sure. Top 10 Premier League players for respective clubs.
Yeah.
This all started with a debate about Eric Cantona now many weeks ago.
Is that what started it, Ger?
Started that.
Right.
And 2 weeks ago, Shane and I did our Manchester United top 10s.
Mm-hmm.
They were analysed, scorned, or celebrated.
Spat out.
Last week, when Nathan was guest hosting, we did Liverpool. Guest co-hosting, actually. And Liverpool, and Nathan did his own Liverpool ones as well. And now, John Duggan, having seen that segment, voluntarily sent me on his top 10 Spurs players in the Premier League era. Bobby Dwyer's ears are just pricked up. So Shane and I decided, well, we'll do our own as well. So we can set ours up now. And then at about 8:40 a.m. this morning, John Duggan will come in and give you his definitive top 10 Tottenham Hotspur players of the Premier League era. But Shane,
Yeah.
I would love to hear your top 10.
We should point out as well that we chose the Premier League era because before 92 we don't really remember the players properly.
You chose to do this because it retrospectively granted you Eric Cantona into the top 10 at Manchester United. It meant that you couldn't grandfather in any players who you hadn't seen before that, and it was it's a raft of self-justification. That just I just want to make sure that everybody out there is aware that
we just need a parameter.
It was a snivelling attempt to justify your own Manchester United fandom ignorance.
Well,
that was it.
I would love to put Danny Blanchflower into this Spurs team. I really would.
Oh yeah.
But I just don't really know where Blanchflower's subtle passing was any bit better than Christian Eriksen's.
You can't understand history because
I understand history.
You can't read books.
I understand the logic of history.
You don't trust anybody.
I totally do.
With the evidence of your own eyes. You're doubting Thomas.
So my top 10, folks,
is subjective.
You have to be there.
You had to be there, as Ken Doherty just said. My top 10 of the Premier League era for Tottenham, and I hope this is in order. 10, Heung-min Son. Number 9, Robbie Keane. 8, David Ginola. 7, my favourite footballer of all time, Dimitar Berbatov. 6, Jurgen Klinsmann. 5, Ledley King. 4, Christian Eriksen. And in the top 3, 3 Gareth Bale, 2 Luka Modric, and 1 Harry of the Canes. I threw Berbatov in there because he was involved heavily in that League Cup win 2008, and if you're a Tottenham fan, winning a trophy does not happen too often, and Berbatov was paramount. Scored in the final, a penalty, I think. Had that partnership with Robbie Keane. I think they were the first players in 4 or 5 years to win the Premier League Player of the Month jointly. They were like, we can't separate these two guys. They're brilliant.
Bromance.
Player of the season at Spurs for a year or two as well. Berbatov was the best. He was the Paul Finlay of Tottenham. Do you know, just a real subtle, slow movement, almost lazy look. Everything seemed like, is he even arsed? And then once he kicked the ball or touched the ball, you're like, oh, this is something else. This is gold. Sultry. Just delicate. Bulgarian beauty. That's what it was, Dimitar Berbatov. So he deserves his place. I don't want to hear anyone say that he didn't. Like, Sheringham's obviously close, and Darren Adderton, and there's others, and I'm sure, Colm, you have your 10 now.
Berbatov was asked recently, was it difficult being a footballer? And he was like, no, not really. It's all easy for me.
Sums him up.
Here's my 10 for people who can't see. Number 10, Sol Campbell. What a player. Judas, of course, as he was labelled after his move to Arsenal for a free transfer, 2001. What a player, though. Number 9, Son. Number 8, Robbie. Number 7, Dimitar. Number 6, Christian Eriksen. Number 5, Jurgen Klinsmann. Only there for 2 seasons. Actually, a season and a half, really, when he came back in 1997-98. But what a season, 94-95. Number 4, Rolls Royce of a centre-half, Ledley King. Never trained, always played. Phenomenal. Did you ever see when he tracks Arjen Robben? Arjen Robben's true 101 in White Hart Lane. Like, one of the fastest players in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And Ledley King sprints back and gets to the ball in time.
Superb tackler.
What a player.
Yeah.
And a top 3, Luka Modric in 3, Gareth Bale number 2, and Harry Kane himself number 1. I would challenge anyone to name a better top 3 in any other team in the Premier League, or in fact any other sport of top 10s. That top 3 is absolutely phenomenal.
Who was your 3, Shane?
Yeah, I had the same 3 but different order. I'd Bale 3 and Modric 2.
All right.
With Kane number 1 as well.
Did you not have Modric way further down your list at one point? Oh no, that's coming later, is it?
No, Modric deserves to be there. Number 2 for me. Oh, 100%.
So Kane's number 1 for both of you.
Yeah. He had Bale 2, I had Modric 2. I had Bale 3, he had Modric.
I think Bale's final season and final 2 seasons at Tottenham is like pretty much untouchable. I think we actually touched on it last week with Luis Suarez season 2013-14 where you couldn't do anything to stop Suarez if he was in the mood, and that was absolutely Bale for 2 seasons at Tottenham.
You've left Ginola out, is that it?
Correct.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but you put Campbell in. Fair enough.
I think people, it's easy to forget about Sol Campbell, but because he doesn't help himself at all with his legacy. But like, what a player, and also won the League Cup at Tottenham as well. I believe. So brilliant defender, and like Tottenham, like this is classic Spurs. They have so many brilliant individual players, but that's also why we're called lads. It's Tottenham.
Does Hugo Lloris deserve to be?
I think Hugo should have a shout. Like, we have a habit now of picking at least one goalkeeper in our top 10s because goalkeepers are crucial to the success of the club. But Hugo's never won anything at Tottenham. No, never won anything. But like a really, really strong top 3, and like Gareth Bale is just endlessly fascinating to me. A guy who was just like, I'm not that bothered anymore, and yet still achieved pretty much everything you can in the game.
Well, that was peak. That was peak Bale, Tottenham Bale.
Yeah, I was impressed his last 2 seasons. So like those 3, and then Luka Modric, when he first signed, I think Harry Redknapp played him on the left. Didn't think he was strong enough to play centre mid in the Premier League, and only moved him into the centre because of injuries. and then you're becoming one of the best technicians that the league has ever seen. And that also coincided with Gareth Bale's amazing form.
People are like going mad. So Paul Compton says, Premier League era, what's the point? And then Fergus Keogh says, any Spurs top 10 excluding Hoddle shows the stupidity of pretending soccer was invented in 1992.
If we extended it to everything, like Paul Gascoigne would be in it as well.
Of course.
I would say Clive Allen would probably be in it.
There's loads of players.
Shouldn't have kids doing top 10s unless it's prime flavour, says Paul Compton. Paul, I would tend to agree with you. I think that the notion that history started when the arbitrary.
No, I haven't drank prime yet either. So
the arbitrary moment of the
back to bed.
I haven't either. Robbie Keane was classed with Spurs.
Advent of satellite TV. Is Robbie Keane really in the top 10?
Yeah, I would say so for his impact in the club. Like 6 years for the first time, and then he had a short spell afterwards. Won the League Cup with them. It's the only trophy that they've won.
I think a lot of Spurs fans wouldn't have him in the top 10.
I think he was.
I do acknowledge our Irishness as maybe shoehorned him in there.
I think he was pretty exceptional for quite a while.
All right. This is a slot the fans are loving. If you want to get in touch this morning, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream. It's a minute past 8. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. As I said, we're going to talk to Mark Lawrenson a little bit later on. We'll preview the game against Real Madrid tonight, but we'll also talk to him about his mate David Moyes. We'll speak with John Duggan and get his top 10. Tommy Rooney is going to talk to us about the weekend's Gaelic football action. And we also have hurling power rankings for the first time this season from Will O'Callaghan of the hurling pod. I think the hurling pod has started a beef. I don't know if you've seen this.
Who is this with?
With the football pod.
Oh, love it. This is what we need.
Well, I think just generally with football, they're basically saying hurling there are hundreds of skills. In football, there are 4. Let's be having you, lads.
Oh, hold on.
Whoa.
So what? How
I don't want to misrepresent them here, Shane, just in case I'm getting that wrong, but that seems to have been the bit that they were like, yeah, that's a good point, let's clip that, let's send that out there and see what happens.
What's the 4 skills in football? Kicking, passing, catching, fist passing. There's loads of skills in both.
Sorry, it is objectively true that hurling is
dragging people down. I suppose that's a skill, isn't it? Battering lads with your elbows.
100%, that's a skill.
Clotheslining. Yeah.
All skills.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't so
putting on an extra man, they're all the skills of football.
Gaelic football is a ridiculous sport. Like, you can play another sport in the sport, and it's totally fine to do that. Hurling is. You
can play pool when you're playing snooker.
Hurling is sensational. Well, that's just different rules. Like,
yeah.
You can just put the ball down and just pass it around if you want.
You can't, to be honest.
You can though.
Yeah.
All right.
But you absolutely can. But
maybe we won't
skillful.
clip that bit either. It's 2 minutes past 8. We're turning our attention to rugby, and I'm delighted to say Alison Miller is with us this morning. Oh, no. Ads first. Okay, there you go. We're going to get to Alison Miller. Ads first.
OTB AM.
The Red 78.
It's going to be a bit of a lottery from the scrum point of view. They are incredibly strong.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Look, the stats sometimes can be skewed. You can have lower possession than the opposition and still win the game.
I can't believe you've been positive for 3 weeks in a row. It must have been something
I know,
that's so
I
out
can't
of your
believe it
mindset.
Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Ireland play Italy this weekend in Six Nations. The Italians are going to have Garbisi back. There was some rumours that maybe Sergio Parisse might be catapulted back in, but that's not going to happen, it looks like now. And they're as dangerous as they've ever been with us riding high at the moment. So this has all the potential for a banana skin, or does it? It looks like Sexton's going to be out according to the papers this morning. So there's plenty for us to get our teeth stuck into, and I'm delighted to say Alison Miller is with us to help us do that. Alison, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, how are you guys?
Obviously, Ireland can't afford to be complacent, but we will be heavy favourites for this game. The Italians have shown an improvement. So what do you expect ahead of this?
Oh yeah, look, the way Ireland are playing and their skill set at the moment, their fitness, the confidence, the form they're bringing in, just the way they're playing, like, obviously Ireland are huge favourites. I think Italy have probably slightly moved away from the way they were playing. At the weekend, I think Italy's scrum wasn't good, or their set piece, where traditionally that would have been good, and they would have probably been like very physical, but they're actually kind of playing, looking to get the ball wide and move to the edges and playing a good tempo. But Ireland will definitely be favourites. They can't be anything but favourites after their performance against France.
Even with Sexton not in the matchday squad?
Yeah, I think we've moved to the stage now where I know Sexton is a brilliant player, but like we've shown that we've no Henshaw, Jemison Gibson Park, Furlong, that we can play and that we can play really well without these players. So I think, look, it's probably a good thing, not for Sexton, but that we are facing this adversity that we've shown with like not having the other players, and we're forced into this situation. I think it will be good for Ireland that in the long run that we have to play like Ross Byrne or whoever it is they're going to pick and be well able to manage. So I think we're at that stage where if we just stick to our systems and all that we can be successful and win the game at the weekend and win it comfortably.
General sense, Alison, seems to be that Andy Farrell won't be changing his team dramatically. Maybe a couple of changes here and there, as we said. But can you understand that, given that the Italy game is slap bang in the middle once again, in the middle of Ireland's Six Nations?
Yeah, I suppose I always expect there to be more changes every year when we're playing Italy. But I suppose you got to keep that consistency. And if players are playing well, I suppose, why would you rotate them? You want to keep that consistency and form. But at the same time, there'll probably be a few changes, but you don't want to have like wholesale changes, which might disturb the flow of how a team are playing. But there'll be a few changes. I'm interested to see who has changed and what way Andy Farrell goes about it, like how much time he gives people off the bench or who he changes. But like Italy have some good players. Like they're 15. Like he's quite a good player. Capuzzo and Garbisi's going to be back at 10. And Lorenzo Cannone, I don't know how I'm pronouncing that. It's probably not how you pronounce it. The number 8 is quite a physical player, and they've got some good players. And like obviously, you've got to show your respect for the opposition. But I just think the way Ireland are playing at the moment, we'll be strong favourites, and they'll be looking to put in a performance. And those guys that get an opportunity at the weekend, they'll be looking to stake their claim. Like for example, like someone like Finlay Bealham, there was a lot of talk about how Ireland would manage without the likes of like world-class Furlong. But I think like that conversation is over. Like Finlay Bealham is now, I think, like they're in competition nearly at this stage. He did so well at the weekend. So, sometimes there's a chance for guys to get an opportunity and show what they can do. And Finlay Bealham, like his scrummaging was really good. Obviously his touch for Hugh Keenan's try was just lovely, soft hands and different things like that. So I think we're at this stage where there's huge competition in the Irish team. So those people that get a chance, they're going to try and take it.
I think those of us who followed Irish rugby for a long period of time are still somewhat concerned about the possibility of a single match in the World Cup devastating the squad to the point where the France game in particular in 2015, where we put in one of our all-time best performances in a World Cup match and lose 5 front row players, 4 through injury and 1 through suspension for the next game, which is the Argentina game, and then they absolutely rip us apart. Now, it wasn't just the injuries that ripped us apart. I've definitely spoken to people who've said our defence wasn't set up to defend the wide channels the way Argentina were going to score and rip us apart anyway. So who knows? Maybe if all those players had been available, we would have been grand. But if that was to happen in this World Cup, where it's possible that the match against South Africa is an absolute brawl from start to finish, and the amount of bodies that are on the ground for the week after or the 10, 12, 14 days afterwards is similar. It feels a little bit like we're getting to the point where we might be able to have enough strength and depth just about to squeak through whatever comes after that. Am I wrong about that? That seems to be what they're doing here, is that they're not making changes to see if you're good enough. You only get in when you're good enough that they're going to be sure about you. And there's been enough injuries already for us to go, actually, there's probably about 28, 29 players that we can reliably go, yeah, you can play in a World Cup quarter-final and we'll be happy enough with you.
Yeah, because you want to deserve your shot at playing, and you don't want to just be rotated in. Like all the players that are getting their game time at the moment, because other guys are injured, are deserving of that, and they're obviously showing their hand in training. I think you made an interesting point actually just about Ireland defending on those wider channels back in 2015. I think we're a lot more comfortable defending in those situations now, which is great. So that might have been a factor. But yeah, I think we definitely have more depth. There is more competition. You do want to give guys opportunity, and I think it's a fine balance of like as we great, like Ross Byrne this weekend. Like I hope he starts. I presume he'll start if Johnny can play. I don't think he is playing, I'm not sure. But I think it'd be great for like the confidence of him, because, you know, he'll be needed in a World Cup, and he'll be needed to play in a World Cup at like highly pressurised situations. And I think it'll also be good for the confidence of the other team, that they know that they can perform without Johnny. And I suppose they're mentally tough enough and they're resilient enough to know this. But I think when they go and do it, maybe, you know, 80 minutes of the weekend or another scenario like that, it really builds that confidence. And I know that's kind of sounds very obvious, but I think that's really, really important. And I think we are a different team than we were back in 2015. Like at the weekend against France, like we scored from broken play, we scored from set piece, we scored from a goal line dropout. We can score, do that lovely tight work in around, you know, the likes of Andrew Porter getting over. We seem to have kind of added more strings to our bow. We're not just reliant on the same things. We're very varied in how we can score. And I think all players that are on the pitch, they're all able to do different they're all able to do the jobs. Like, you know, forwards are able to play make. We're definitely more what is the word I'm looking for? But basically what I'm trying to say is I think that any player that can come in can kind of do the job that the player before them could. So it's not, hopefully we're not too reliant on any one player. Obviously Johnny Sexton is world class. You kind of look at Hugo Keenan, he's nailed on, like who comes in for him if he would potentially, you know, not available or injured at any sense. But I think we've got to that stage, I think anyway.
It seems this team, Alison, we've already been talking about this team as one that seems to take the number one slot in the world, and the form that they're in with a pinch of salt, and they move on and they're used to it and they can deal with it maybe better than previous Irish squads. Complacency is another thing as well that often was a hallmark of teams that either lost to Italy or were pushed very close by Italy. Complacency does not seem to be an issue with this Irish team though.
No, they seem just in a different place than they were previously, and I know a lot of the players talk about it's a really enjoyable environment, and I think they look relaxed, but in the greatest sense of the word. You know, that they're enjoying their rugby. The competition among players is phenomenal, so that won't allow players to be complacent. And I think Andy Farrell, true to his word, I think he rewards form, and I think that is a good way to set your team up, because every player is in there on their toes, and that doesn't allow for complacency in a team. Because I think, and it's no disrespect to Joe Smith, but I think he had his tried and tested that he went to each time, and that I think can sometimes lead to a bit of complacency, because I'm going to play, you know. So I think they seem to be comfortable. They just seem to be comfortable in the processes that they're doing. Like, you know, this is how we play. Like the defence against France was so disciplined. You know, everyone stuck to their system. You know, knowing the right time to try and rob a ball, not to rob a ball. You know, keep that line integrity, keep their spacing. Just looked really good, and that discipline that everyone can do that. So I think they're just really enjoying their rugby, and I think it seems to be a really good culture, really good atmosphere in there that would make a massive difference to a team performing. It seems like, I don't know, it sounds a bit cheesy, but they all seem happy in there. And I think that if you're enjoying your rugby and you're playing good rugby, I think everything becomes a lot more easier. And, you know, they're handling that pressure well. And I think that was one of the things that came back from the 2019 World Cup. They kind of mentally failed. So obviously that's something that's been worked on like over the last few years.
Can I talk to you a little bit about the Munster fans' backlash against Scott Penny being named in the squad? I don't want to just dismiss it as provincialism, and like there's definitely people who you would want to listen to saying that they're concerned about how Scott Penny being selected might have an impact on people's willingness to support the team. It's a big leap, right? And I definitely don't agree with it. You know, I think that surely the Irish selectors at this point have a track record of picking players from the bench at international, at provincial level, and putting them in the team. Treadwell's got called back up, for example, after, you know, not being anywhere near the squad, and then being in the team, and then not being anywhere near the squad again. And we're like, well, you know, I trust him now because they put him in the team and he played really well in New Zealand. And likewise, Jemison Gibson Park came from the bench at Leinster to be one of the best scrum halves in the world. So I just think that if they decide that Penny is somebody they want in the squad, then fair enough. But the Munster fans have had a backlash against this, saying that, you know, it's dispiriting for the Munster players who are playing well and who are playing in the Champions Cup, when Penny has literally played, I think, you know, a short period in the second half off the bench against Racing, and that's the sum total of his experience. Is there anything to this?
I suppose, like, you know, they're entitled to feel what they feel, but I think every decision nearly every decision Andy Farrell has decided, like the Jemison Gibson Park has worked out, and they're obviously seeing something there that will fit into their system and the way that we're going to play, and that, because often, like, you know, you look at combinations of players, it's also combinations that work and who's right for the team and the different scenarios. So, like, they're obviously looking at him and saying he's going to fit into our system, he's going to fit into the way that we want to play, he's an asset in some scenarios. So, like, you've just got to back the, you know, Andy Farrell and the coaches there, they're making the right decision, like, and, you know, I think they will pick the best players. You know, if a team is doing very well, it's easier for players to get selected, but I think every decision that he's made so far has generally been the right one. So I think time will tell, and we'll just have to see what happens.
I don't know. I think, like, if Paul O'Connell felt there was somehow a bias against the province that he comes from, he'd have been fighting the corner for the individual. I don't feel like it's credible to suggest that, you know, just because you're a Leinster player, it automatically puts you ahead of players in other provinces. I think this has to be a case-by-case basis, and they've obviously seen something they like. But, I mean, let's face it, he's going to be holding tackle bags this week in training. Very unlikely he's going to get any match day action. So I'm just surprised that there's been such a backlash against it.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, that Irish team, like, there is a huge, like, portion of Leinster players, and that's just the quality that they are. Like, they're really, really good players playing a really good team, and I think maybe that's where the backlash is coming. Yeah, and, like, you know, he's been brought in there to soak up whatever he can and learn, and he's been brought in there for a reason. And, like, yeah, like, he's not going to feature, so I'm not sure what the backlash is. I think they're obviously feeling maybe that, like, you know, there is big talk at the moment for inclusion of Gavin Coombs because he's playing so well. Like, so is that something maybe that happens this weekend? I don't know. Like, does he come in on the bench, or because he is playing very well? But look, there'll always be a bit of divisiveness about certain selections, and I suppose in Munster for so long were the dominant province in Ireland and had that initial success. So, but, like, even just look at, like, Leinster at the weekend, you know, even though they weren't extremely impressive with all the guys gone for the Six Nations, they still just can comfortably, you know, win games. So I suppose maybe it's I don't know, you know, what can you say really about that?
Alison, Ger mentioned Jemison Gibson Park there. Like, it's amazing how quickly things can change in 2 games, but all of a sudden has Conor Murray turned the tide completely in terms of that scrum half pecking order?
I think Conor Murray did really well against France, and I thought he played well. I think he's a different type of player than Jemison Gibson Park. He's taken his opportunity because of the injury. I thought he played well, he had a very difficult week personally, and he played really well. I thought he looked more like himself of old. I thought for quite a long time he looked zippy, like his tempo, he was moving around the park. I just thought, I don't necessarily know, like, I think he's in there now and he's going to try and hold on to it, and I think depends, you know, when Jemison Gibson Park gets back, like, you know, they are 2 different players. Conor Murray is very good at controlling games, and he's an intelligent player. He's a huge experience, and he plays in a different way. But he's going to be there now. He's going to back himself to hold on to that position. I think if he continues his form, I mean, he'll back himself to hold on to it. But let's see how he does this weekend and the following games, and when Jemison Gibson Park gets back. But 2 different players, they bring different things. You know, it might be the fact that you bring on Conor Murray off the bench to try and control a game if you're in a certain scenario. But like Jamison Gibson Park obviously has a very good relationship with Sexton, and the speed of ball that he produces and that quick ruck ball that he tries off, you know, it gets Ireland playing. I think Ireland have become a really skillful team and a really fit team, and I think they're looking to play that real like high tempo ball and play. I think the ball was in play for something like 4 to 6 or 7 minutes at the weekend. So I think Murray looked better at the weekend than I've seen him in a long time, but probably not giving a straightforward answer there.
The point about the 10, right? You expect Ross Byrne to start, but who's on the bench? Because they bring Joey Carbery back, and they've invested a lot of time and a lot of effort into making Joey Carbery the natural successor to Sexton. Then they've given him the kick up the ass. Is this a recovery and you stick him on the bench and you see what happens? Like, or are you saying, no, we need to see a bit more from you here, off you go?
Well, I would think I would be a fan of Carbery, but if he's just been called in because of injury and you've got Crowley there and you've already got Ross Byrne there, I would think it would be Crowley on the bench. Like, you know, I don't think what's he done in one. Well, he's obviously played very well for Munster, but I think that would be my thinking, that, you know, he's in there now and he's you know, he's getting back into the flow of things with the team. But I would have Crowley there, and I am a big fan of Carbery, but I would think that at this stage that they would have Crowley on the bench, but I could be wrong.
All right, Alison, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
It's Alison Miller giving her some thoughts on that. The Penny, essentially, right, the debate boils down to this comment here. Patrick Howell says, Penny doesn't start for any other province. This is the reason fans from the other provinces have stopped going to games. Players in form are being ignored over squad players in Leinster. It's obviously a view that is widely held enough for people to be expressing it on social media and in our comments, because you know, Patrick's not the only person who said it. I'm just not convinced that it stands up to scrutiny. Like, it's the same situation where Treadwell isn't starting for Ulster, but he does a job that they need and they put him in the team. Does Tom O'Toole start every game? I'm not sure. Like, he might be closer to first choice, but like, Cian Healy doesn't start every game, and it's a specialist position. But like, I think they see Penny in a specialist position as the open side flanker and the natural successor to Josh van der Fleer, and so their job, it looks like, is going to be to take this team through from this World Cup, hopefully through a Lions tour and on to the next World Cup. And if they're thinking, I'm going to put Scott Penny in now, and maybe it's a kick up the ass for Hodnett.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't think Hodnett's ever going to make it to that level, because let's face it, there's been loads of players who come through at Munster and other provinces and at Leinster who have shown some promise and then disappeared. I'm very surprised by the backlash to this.
I think it's completely rational that a player might not fit in at their province in terms of style all of the time, and yet Andy Farrell might spot something that he thinks, well, that fits in with what I'm doing here. Like, the style of play with Ireland doesn't have to be the same as Ulster or Connacht's or Leinster or Munster style of play. Like, there could be differences, and players might not fit in at their province any given week. Like, I think it's in any other sport this wouldn't be queried.
It's also the track record of picking people and going, okay, you're not first choice, but we're going to put you in. Like, I mean, I in a way, I think we were surprised that Murray was considered the automatic replacement for Gibson Park.
Yeah. But
not in their minds. There was clearly no doubt. Like, there's just been that bit recently where Munster hadn't picked him in a game, and everyone's like, was he being rested? Is this part of his minutes, or what's the story? Is there a new pecking order in Munster? And Ireland are like, what are you talking about? This guy's like Centurion.
Yeah.
Lions tourist multiple times. He's our guy. And then he repays them. And like, if they were truly anti the other provinces, Finlay Bealham wouldn't be getting a look in. Like, they wouldn't have put Bundy on the bench when he wasn't playing for Connacht. They would have said, oh, sorry, you can't get in the Connacht team. You're not going on the bench. Like,
I don't think Andy Farrell cares what colour jersey you're wearing at that level.
Not a jot. Can you do the job? Yes or no? Treadwell, like, we were all, really, he's going to be in the team? He's going to play? That can't be the case, can it? And then he plays brilliantly, and they're like, you guys seem to know a little bit about what you're doing here. But no, Scott Penny seems to be this lightning rod. Like, what should be a really brilliant day for him like, I don't know.
I think Andy Farrell has earned the trust of the Irish fans at this point. So I think,
wind your neck in there, lads.
well, yeah, whatever decision he's making, I think we can safely say he's doing the job well. We can maybe relax it a little bit and keep our opinions to ourselves. We're not at the IRFU High Performance Centre in Abbottstown. We don't get to see them training. We don't know who's playing well, who's not playing well, what Andy Farrell and Simon Easterby and the rest of the coaching team are thinking. We just don't have a clue. So let them at it.
Right, 25 minutes past 8 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. It is one of those special, magical Anfield nights tonight as Real Madrid roll into town, the Champions League music players. And Jurgen Klopp is fresh from the fever dream of having beaten Newcastle at the weekend and then brought himself crashing to earth by watching last season's Champions League final again on video. Mark Lawrenson, a video nasty for Jurgen Klopp to inspire him and the team, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they feel aggrieved, don't they? I think they deserve to win that night. If it wasn't for the goalkeeper, for the Madrid goalkeeper, they would have won. Sometimes, as we know, in finals, the best team doesn't necessarily win the game. So, yeah, I think this is the season tonight, isn't it? This game and the one when they play Madrid are basically Liverpool's season. So, it'll be interesting to see. As you know, the atmosphere will be red hot. But it's Madrid, and they're used to it. They're used to coping, going wherever they play around the world, and the home team wanting desperately to beat them.
We've seen Real Madrid over the last couple of seasons buy all the best young talent in the world, apparently, and start to put it in the team so that their legendary midfield trio has already broken up. Casemiro has gone to Manchester United, and we're seeing the other two spend a little bit less time. And you're like, oh, that's a very well-run club. And then out of nowhere, Bajcetic comes into the team, and at 18 is Liverpool's best player, and suddenly the fear, like 4 weeks ago, was, oh, they've got nothing coming through and they're going to have to spend hundreds of millions to get whoever, Bellingham and whoever else will make them recover. There was, for the goal, and it doesn't show up on the highlights, but for the first goal against Newcastle, there's a turn that Bajcetic does that like creates all the space, and then he just looks up and pings the ball, and the goal is on straight away, just from the shimmy of the hips. And it seems really basic stuff, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, he's a player, and I mean, I hate to go a little bit early with when you see young players come in the team, because there's always like, they get to a crest and then they drop a little bit and then they come back. But he's been outstanding, and as you rightly say, and I've been at all the last 5 or 6 games since he started, and he's been outstanding, and he has been the best player. So it remains to be seen today what will happen. I think. Obviously, he got Fabinho back at the weekend. Henderson's in there as well. And it's an area where you need all that experience. But Bajcetic, most definitely, because he's different. And as you rightly say, he's done that on a few occasions with his turn and everything. And people have bought it, playing against him in midfield. And it's made all the difference. He'll put his foot in as well. I mean, I think his first 2 games, if my memory serves me right, he got booked. But he got booked early on in the game. You're thinking, another, makes a mistake with one of the tackles, and he loves a tackle, and he gets a yellow and he's gone. But he seems to be able to manage it, and it's a classic case of he's just got no fear at the moment. He probably goes home after training every day and says, well, this is easy. Well, I should have done this 2 years ago when I was a real kid.
How important was the identity of the goal scorers at the weekend, Mark, considering the gravity of the game tonight? Like, to see Gakpo and Nunez get in the score sheet, remains to be seen whether Nunez's shoulder is okay for tonight. We'll see this evening. But for both of them to get on the goal sheet, a little bit of confidence will do them no harm.
Yeah, well, so that's 2 and 2 for Gakpo, wasn't it? So that's good for him. And I think the goals were very similar, as everybody appreciates. And look, it's something we've been missing, the fact that when you don't play particularly well, you kind of you look after the ball a little bit more, as in you don't want to give it away because you think, oh, here we go, give it back to the opposition, etc. And for once, we've actually really started to look forward and we certainly looked in behind Newcastle at the weekend and basically cut them to ribbons. So it'll be interesting if we can do that tonight. But the confidence is now high with those two. I think Nunez will play. I'll be very, very surprised if he doesn't. I think he just fell on his shoulder. After a bit of treatment and everything, he's probably got some soreness, but surely you would think he'd be desperate to play. And, we know he's lightning quick, and it'd be good that he does start to test the Real Madrid at the back. So, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? A couple of decent results. They were okay against Everton. They're a poor side, as we know. But 2 results and the place looks completely different. The news now that, FSG aren't going to sell as well. So it'll be absolutely banging tonight in that stadium.
It is the season. Maybe it's less now the season than it was before, because there's still a strong possibility that they go on a run and they can finish top 4. But if they were to beat Real Madrid, then the possibilities are really endless for this year.
Yeah, it's a big if, though, isn't it? Because you're always aware that, they've basically played last 2 games. They were decent against Everton and they were good against Newcastle, but this is a team who obviously all knew they were going to play in a final this coming weekend. And if you drop off 5% in the Premier League, we've seen what happens. So yeah, it's you're looking at it now and you think, look, if they can continue this form and make it even better, they might get a chance top 4. But I think we need to wait a little bit because they've had a couple of false dawns as well, and we still look like we could concede. The way that Newcastle started at the weekend, they could have had a couple of goals. So before we'd even really got started. So we'll wait and see. But the signs are good, aren't they? Green shoots of recovery, maybe.
Yeah, it's a fair way of putting it. I was going to bring up the chances that Newcastle had, and like at their absolute peak when they were winning the league with 100 points or whatever, a million goals. Like they were always playing a high wire act, the high line, and Alison was frequently making a number of brilliant saves. So like that is kind of part of the Liverpool DNA, is that they will concede chances, but they're going to be difficult chances, and it's going to take world-class finishing from Vinicius Junior or whoever else.
Yeah, problem is you might get that, might you, with Madrid. I think I think word's gone out with all the other teams, certainly in the Premier League, which is that, have a real go at Liverpool. And the problem has been the fact that generally the kind of midfield 3 haven't really protected the back 4, and that's made them a little bit open, and that's why they've conceded lots of chances. And as good as the result was against Everton, which is always good when you beat them in the derby, don't forget Tarkowski, 6 inches, and the Everton were 1-0 up, and obviously we scored from the breakaway. But so it's always those little finer moments in games that define the ultimate outcome with me. So we'll just wait and see. And because I'm a little bit going tonight to work, and I'm thinking I'm also a little bit prepared to think that this might be a really big task, and it'd be really interesting to see if they're up to it.
Is it still a concern, Mark, that Jurgen Klopp doesn't seem to know his best starting 11? Like, I know, look at you, the likes of Konate has only played 5 games this season in the league, and Jota hasn't scored since last April. But aside from players being out of form, he still doesn't know his best 11. Is that a fair assumption?
I think he does now. So obviously availability is always the key. I think as soon as Konate's fit, he gets slotted back in. Joe Gomez has done okay, but he generally makes a mistake a game. I think he seems to lack a little bit of concentration at times. There's no shortage of ability, but that seems to happen with him. He'll be better, obviously, playing alongside Van Dijk. So Konate would be in, and probably Thiago would be in the team. Fabinho's the one, because since he came back from the World Cup, he's been poor, in all honesty. And I know that the family, they've just had a baby and maybe he's had some late nights or whatever it is. He was a little better on Saturday, but I'm still looking at the game and I'm thinking in midfield is just absolutely, totally the key today, because if Madrid play well, they'll keep the ball and they make it extremely difficult for Liverpool.
I think he does know his best 11 now after the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think Henderson is going to start. I think Fabinho is going to start. I think Bacic is going to start. And then the front 3 is the front 3 now. That's it. He's going to give them a run of 10 games and see how they go.
I would say so, absolutely. And as I say, as soon as Konate's fit, I think they'll get him straight back in. And hopefully, you know what it's like, guys. I was listening to you there talking about the rugby and everything. And, it's all about momentum at that level. because everybody's got the ability. There's no doubt about it. And obviously, once you get the momentum and you get the confidence and consistency, and you've got really good players, you start winning games, whatever sport it is.
Is that a real thing, Mark? Is that something that you certainly noticed in your own career, momentum as a tangible thing that helps?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, if you get momentum and you start playing well and you start winning games, if you've got outstanding players, and dare I say it, the game can become quite easy. And you've got, fantastic confidence. And when you've got really good players, you're all very comfortable on the ball. It doesn't half make a difference. And it also, what it does is it gives you this feeling of not that you're you're brilliant or anything like that, but you just know with the consistency and the form that with the players that you have in the team, you're going to win a majority of games. And sometimes that's why you go on these big long runs of 15, 20 games unbeaten.
Can I ask you about the re-emergence of Rafa Benitez over the last 5-6 weeks?
Yeah, you can.
He's made
his head above the parapet. Good old Rafa.
Yeah. There's a big piece in the London Times today, remembering when he beat Real Madrid, and remembering when Sergio Ramos used to tell him stuff, and how he met Bacetic's father out in China, and it's basically like a Forrest Gump style, all the key moments of history. And I don't want to diminish his time at Liverpool as manager, but like it has become known somehow that of all of the jobs in the Premier League that might become available, the one that would interest him the most is the West Ham job. Now certainly he hasn't denied this, and I suspect maybe there's an agent somewhere trying to chisel him in, but it seems a little bit I don't know, does it? It doesn't seem entirely kosher.
I'll tell you what it is. Rafa's bored, and he obviously wants a job. His missus, because in all the jobs that he's had in the last few years, his wife and the 2 kids have never moved. They still live on the Wirral, which is, you go through the Mersey Tunnel to get to Liverpool from the Wirral, and the deal has always been that look, we're not moving the kids. They're at school, all those kind of things, and Rafa's gone and done his thing. He went to China, for God's sake. Who would want to go and manage in China? I know that the money's fabulous, but not for me. So I think he's at that time now. The Leeds job maybe come up. He might have a chance with that. So now I think it's timing. It's like, just remember me, remember what I did, and he won't be short in telling people what he's done. But he's a really nice bloke, but he wants a job, doesn't he? Basically, is the bottom line.
But isn't David Moyes the best man to take West Ham through to the end of the season? He's the one with the relegation battle experiences.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously biased because he's my pal. So he absolutely totally is, and I don't think he's under any great pressure from the hierarchy of which obviously they lost. One of the guys the other week, didn't he? Unfortunately, who passed away. But yeah, I think David Sullivan is very much in Moyes' corner, and obviously they need to win some games. And I've been really surprised that they've not really. I thought they'd start to pull away, but it's certainly not been that way. But yeah, he's a firefighter, isn't he? Basically, in football, and he makes the team very difficult to beat. But obviously, at the weekend, to be beaten by Tottenham was a poor result for him. But they've probably had a little look. The owners probably had a little look around at who they could possibly get if the situation got worse. And he's probably looking around and thinking, well, actually, what West Ham need is David Moyes. It was a bit like when Sam Allardyce was there and he left. And it was like, well, what they actually need was Sam Allardyce. Obviously completely different. But yeah, I think he'll be fine. He'll just get his head down and work even harder. But they need something, and they need to start soon, definitely.
We're guilty, I think, Mark, sometimes in the media, and certainly football fans as well, of maybe thinking of football managers as maybe not humans with actual human emotions. Like, how does David deal with pressure like this when people are talking about the the sack race and the relegation battle and all that? Does it get to him, or is he well capable of coping with it?
No, he doesn't change. In fairness to him, he doesn't change whether they've won 6 or they've lost 6. I want to say that he probably works even harder if they've lost 6. No, he's just a real football man. He's not really got anything else in his life. and I mean that in the nicest possible way. And he's just he lives very close to the ground, and he basically spends nearly all his day at the training ground, all his day planning, plotting, coaching, cajoling, whatever you want to call it. And his work ethic is as good as it's up there with Fergie. And, preparation, all those kind of things. But he needs a bit of a break at the moment. So hopefully he'll get one. But you're right, you need, when you're struggling down there, you need scrappers. And you need scrappers in your team, and you need a manager who's obviously extremely driven, which he is.
Declan Rice was kind of less than, I don't know, maybe we overread too much into this. He was saying the 5 at the back and 3 in midfield, left the 2 strikers isolated. Maybe that's just a good tactical analysis of what they did, and we should expect that. Or the way it's being sold is, Rice is unhappy at the tactics, and
he's got a great relationship with Declan Rice, but I think everybody knows that Declan's going in the summer. Where he goes to, and whatever he does, obviously that's down to him. But I think they're looking around already. And in all honesty, if you were looking around for a similar type of player, you'd be looking at Man City, and you'd be looking at Phillips, wouldn't you? Who obviously doesn't get anywhere near the team. And if you're talking over 100 million for Declan Rice, you might get Phillips for 40 mil, and another couple of players. So he's always been good at that, Moise. He's improved players and sold them on. His record at Everton with buying players and selling them is actually, when you look at it, is incredible, and the amount of money he made for the football club. So, yeah, I think Declan Rice will be gone in the summer, and obviously somebody will come in. It might need 2 players to come and take his position, which happens at club because he is that good a player, Rice.
All right, we'll leave it there. Enjoy the game tonight, Mark. Thanks a million.
Will do.
It's Mark Lawrenson there, off to Anfield this evening for a big European game. Real Madrid doesn't get any bigger.
Cracking atmosphere. I'll tell you what about the European games as well. I saw a notice from one of the Manchester United fan groups calling for Thursday night Barcelona, the music to be turned off at Old Trafford 10 minutes before kick-off at half-time and full time, which they did before Man City apparently, and added unquestionably to the atmosphere. So turns out turning off music and letting the fans do their own singing works. So Aviva Stadium, take note. That's interesting. Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. Braeburn Coffee is coming to an Applegreen store near you, with new Braeburn locations popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn, BRAEBURN, to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. It is 8:42. John Duggan is with us this morning. John, you have been correcting the lads' incorrect lists from earlier on.
Well, I've picked my Tottenham top 10 of the Premier League era, and it's very hard as an Irishman and as a dub to leave Robbie Keane out, but I've done that because you've got to be a pro when you're picking these things, and such a great servant for the country and for the club. But most of the thinking around my team is built around the fact that under Pochettino, Spurs had the best team since the 60s. So 5th, 3rd, 2nd, 3rd and 4th, a Champions League final in there as well in 2019. And that second place finish in 2017 had 86 points, which would have been good enough to win 9 Premier League titles since the Premier League came into being 30 years ago. And Spurs have only won 2 League Cups since the Premier League began. So that, if they'd won some Europa Leagues, FA Cups, you might include the likes of Teddy Sheringham or Jermaine Defoe in there. But most of my team is based around that team in the Pochettino era.
Where did you two have Robbie Keane?
I had Robbie fairly high. I think he number 8. Yeah, number 9.
And did he make Colm's list?
He made Colm's at number 8.
And not in John Duggan's top 10.
No. So my
you can expect some pressure, some frosty messages.
Well, yeah, they're probably saying, "Oh, you're just a Clare lad." So Toby Alderweireld, number 10, always had issues, Spurs, historically, with defence, but Alderweireld rock solid with Jan Vertonghen at 236 appearances. And look how well big an influence he was for Belgium as well. Number 9, Luka Modric, one of the key drivers of Spurs becoming a Champions League team for the first time under Harry Redknapp. But most of his best work as a footballer, as a world, one of the best players in the world, was done at Madrid. So it wasn't really long enough at Spurs to kind of get a higher rank for me. Number 9.
That's going to be controversial, you know that, because the lads have Modric in their top 3s.
He's number 2 for me, John.
Yeah, just obviously one of the best players in the history of the game in the last generation, but not at Tottenham.
How long was he at Spurs?
4 years.
4 years, long enough, no?
Yeah, but once again, my thinking's really based around this Pochettino team. David Ginola, number 8, scandalously won that PFA Player of the Year award in 1999 when Man United did the treble. There was a goal against Barnsley in that year in the Cup, which was just off the scale in terms of slaloming through players and scoring. And that year he had 10 assists. So look, he's a Spurs player that played the way that Spurs fans think the game should be played. The game is about glory and it's about a bit of panache.
Well, he was only 97 to 2000.
I was going to say, he wasn't there that long either, was he?
No.
Not having this.
He's number 8, but he's the epitome of the way Tottenham should play, in inverted commas. Jan Vertonghen, number 7, club legend, 315 appearances, 145 for Belgium, says a lot as well. Like, I remember him starting off at left back, but then transitioned into the centre and was such a rock solid player. And once again, Spurs have had poor defenders in many years.
Are Vertonghen and Alderweireld not just
the same?
Grand.
No,
are they not just grand? Like, you do have. We'll get to Ledley King. I noticed Sol Campbell is missing.
Yeah, and there's nothing to do with the fact that he's a Judas that went to Arsenal.
It obviously is, though, right? Because he's way better than these two.
That's a fact.
I really don't see it that way. I really see Vertonghen and Alderweireld were like the players who were very close to the top of the world with Belgium. They got to semi-final of a World Cup, narrowly beaten by France, and these 86 points, rock solid defence. Never lost a game over Hard Lane that 2016-17 season. And the Tottenham of that 3, 4, 5 years is far superior than the Tottenham of any other time in the Premier League. And that's my thinking here. Number 6, Jurgen Klinsmann. So the Premier League now a global league, and he was one of the first players that brought the novelty and the stardust. And Spurs were so bad in the 90s that they needed Klinsmann to get them in 98 for half a season to save them from the drop. He scored 4 goals in one game against Wimbledon. But in the first season in 94-95, he scored 20 Premier League goals in 41 games. Remember, there was a game against Liverpool in the Cup quarter-final. The ball went straight through to him and just buried it. Just what a deadly finisher, a World Cup winner, as we know.
I think Klinsmann definitely has this kind of weird impact where it's way out of kilter with the amount of time that he spent there.
Yeah.
And because it's funny that Modric is 9 and Klinsmann is 6. Even though Modric was there essentially 4 times longer. Okay, the second coming probably helps to grandfather Klinsmann in a little bit further. But I think I don't know. Modric seems to have become world class at Spurs. I'm lobbying here for you to make a change.
Yeah, it's like, what's it, the Dublin Mount Rushmore. Christian Eriksen, number 5, he pulled the strings. He's the most creative player we've had since Gascoigne. 305 appearances, 69 goals, 90 assists, the best playmaker of the club in recent times. Heung-min Son, number 4. Look, it's now a global league, and you wouldn't see Heung-min Son out of place at both Man City and Liverpool. That's why he's so high for me. 139 goals in 355 games. Won the joint Golden Boot last year. Plays with a smile on his face once again. I think really part of the club's DNA and is very much loved by the club. But these kind of things are important in terms of where you're ranking. It's not always just about the exact talent. It's also about what they mean to the club. Ledley King, if he'd knees that worked, he would have been the best centre half in English football since Bobby Moore. Never trained, a bit like Paul McGrath. Turned up, missed like 3 or 4 seasons in a row with chronic injuries. But was part of that team that reached the Champions League for the first time under Harry Redknapp, captained the team that night when they beat Man City in 2010. And 322 appearances. And also, once again, important for me, he's a one-club man. So I think that's why he's such a high rank for me. I don't think probably many people would disagree with the top 2. Gareth Bale won PFA Player of the Year twice, 2011, 2013, British record transfer fee in terms of the sale. They signed a load of duds out of it, but the one good player they did sign was Eriksen. But he scored incredible goals. He was unplayable. It's amazing the way he transitioned from a left back who didn't win a game, I think, for 2 years, into a player that was just utterly world class. And then we saw what we did with Madrid.
Christian Eriksen, even though at the end he was basically like, no, not having this anymore. I've had enough. I want to go.
Yeah.
He gets forgiven for that?
He does, because of 7 years. And as I said, most of my...
Sol Campbell, not forgiven.
No, he's Judas. Harry Kane, number 1, 3 golden boots, 267 goals, now club record, surpassing Greavesy, can play as a 10 and a 9, and he's worked so hard at his game, which I think is a bit underplayed when it comes to Harry Kane, club legend, and he's my number 1. I'd be surprised, maybe people would argue for Bale, but I think that's a pretty solid number 1.
Colm wants you to... what about Dele Alli? At one point, would he have made your top 10?
If Dele Alli had been the player of 2016-17 for the last 5 years, absolutely, but unfortunately, just all went so wrong for him, and maybe he's just a warning sign. I don't know whether it was Jose Mourinho's warnings about his commitment, or just that he was just one of these players that just really fitted into the system with Pochettino, and he didn't fit into systems. He was a moments player, and it just didn't fit with other clubs. But it's a strange tale. It's one of the strangest tales of the recent era. But Dele for a couple of seasons was great, but I think you do need a bit of longevity. And I saw talk about Christian Eriksen 7 years. And
Teddy Sheringham seems to be one of the controversial absences based on the YouTube comments as well, from all of our teams, myself, yourself, and Colm.
Well, once again, Teddy Sheringham was a really, really good player and also a Golden Boot winner, but in a team that was bang average. So would there be a team that would be relegated without him? We obviously saw what he went on to do at Manchester United. But Teddy Sheringham also lacked a lot of pace. And when I'm looking at players like Son, would Teddy Sheringham get in the Man City Liverpool team now, 30 years on or whatever? I'm thinking like Son would definitely get in, Kane would definitely get in. And I'd be quite harsh on the likes of Jermaine Defoe and Robbie Keane, but...
And two words for you, John, as well. Dimitar Berbatov.
Yeah, well, there you go again. Dimitar Berbatov, another player who ended up at Man United and probably ended up having a better career at Man United after leaving Spurs.
But he won a trophy. See, is that 08 League Cup? Because Tottenham don't win that many trophies, do we not have to put some weight on that year?
No, I don't think so.
Keane and Berbatov?
I think Tottenham, over the last 23 years, have won 2 League Cups. Between 61 and 84, I think they won we're talking about 5 FA Cups, 2 European UEFA Cups, a Cup Winners' Cup, and a League Championship. So I just really think it's a terrible return. So therefore, I'm looking very, very closely at the Pochettino era with those incredible results in the league. Best team since the 60s and 86 points in the league, which was unlucky not to win a title.
Unlucky / choked. We should not...
Well, they choked their first year. They choked this 2016 year, definitely. But the 2017 year is just they ran into Antonio Conte and Diego Costa, who got 93 points for Chelsea.
Ask John if Dembele was close to his list.
Yeah, Dembele was definitely close. Very underrated midfielder, once again, of the Poch era.
From Barry McConnell.
Barry, it's just, when you think of Dembele is he was the Busquets of Spurs, right? But when I'm thinking about, like even Belgium, he wasn't breaking through in 18, and that kind of went against my thinking.
I've got an image in my head, John, of Luka Modric hopping on the bus this afternoon in Liverpool, getting the bus down to Anfield with the Real Madrid team, pops his earphones into his phone, sticks on the highlights from OTB AM. John Duggan has him 9th.
Did you do the Man United team, Shane?
I did.
Was Park Ji-sung in it?
Park did not make my top 10 of the Premier League era. But he was close. He was close. More of a cult hero. But Modric is more than a cult hero. Modric is...
I love your confidence that Luka Modric would be listening to OTB AM.
Of course he is.
Right. John, good stuff.
All right, thanks lads.
More from John on Saturday afternoon and Off the Ball on News Talk, of course. It's 8:52. Tommy Rooney is with us. Tommy, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger. Morning, Shane.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very well. We're not doing the power rankings this week.
No.
Okay.
We can't be doing it every week.
I think we can.
Be doing it every week.
I think we should open this. I think we should ask the public what they want. Do we want to do the power rankings every week? They're supposed to bob up and down. Because otherwise you're just going to have Kerry 1, Dublin 2 the whole season until they meet in the All-Ireland final, and there's nothing to talk about. That's
not necessarily.
Got to give the public what they want, Tommy.
During the championship, I'm happy to flip-flop a bit more, but during the league, lads, I just think we need a bit more to go off.
A bit more evidence.
The league's taking on more importance though, Tommy, isn't it?
Jane Monaghan wouldn't be moving and Clare wouldn't be moving either, Ger.
Well, good win for Monaghan. Is it because Meath would have moved down? Is that why you didn't want to do it?
Maybe.
No, not at all. I actually feel very uncomfortable having Meath where I do.
Where do you have them?
Are Meath 14th?
Right.
Yeah. No, Meath are 13th. Yeah, I feel uncomfortable because I had Meath at 15th early on. They were starting from a low base from where they ended last year, and you could see it was great to get the 2 wins. People had the chest out. They were a bit louder on social media, but you could definitely see that there was a rawness to this team, and that was absolutely proven on Saturday night. It was like under 9s against a senior team.
Derry's
at times.
Derry's second goal. I don't know if I thought it was beautiful. It was like maybe you can't appreciate it, Tommy, but it was like
it was, yeah.
There was a goal that Argentina scored against, I want to say Yugoslavia in the World Cup. Was it the fourth Cambiasso one? There's like 1,000 passes.
Yeah.
And there's a side foot into an empty net, and you're like, oh my God, wow. And there was just a bang of that. There was like Derry, side to side, pro, bang. And
well, that's an interesting point, Ger, because I think that illustrated the difference between the two teams. Derry knew how to strangle the life out of that game when Meath kicked the long ball. Now, Meath got away with it against Cork, and they got away with it against Clare to an extent. I actually thought Clare might punish them a bit more by kicking away possession, because it's what Clare thrive on. Cork are obviously on their own journey, and they're just not there yet. But look, I do think Meath will get joy out of a bit more of a direct game. You saw the damage that Cork did against Dublin, going direct into the Cork full forward line to Hurley, and Chris O'Jones got a bit of joy early on. I do think that can work for Meath. I just think when the rain is raining like it was in Derry and Owen Begg, and you haven't got your main forwards, you haven't got your main kicker in midfield, try and hold on to possession a bit more. You've played that way for 6 years under McEntee. Just a little bit more of a marriage of styles, a bit smarter, a bit more smarts would have made a difference there. And coming up against Gallagher's Derry, who are one of the smartest teams going, it wasn't pretty to watch.
I think there's a bang of Galway in their first season under Joyce, where it's like, it's going to be my way, old school, and then there'll be a come to Jesus moment where they're like, well, maybe we could do a little bit of everything.
Possibly, although I don't know if you heard Colm O'Rourke on with Tommy Tiernan on Saturday night.
I did not.
It's well worth listening back to. Great chat. It's funny. He was a geography teacher back in the day, so there's a nice dynamic there. Tommy opens the show by saying, "Jez, did you ever think when you were kicking me out of class that you'd be sitting on my show in about 20 years' time?" But if you listen to Colm O'Rourke and that, as a Meath person, it would give you a bit of hope that something will come from it, because he takes his football very seriously without taking it seriously, if you know what I mean. So I think he could facilitate, I don't know, something fresh in that Meath panel. Like, Meath have got coaches that were involved in the women's rejuvenation, in Shane Wall and Paul Garrigan. Stephen Bray and Barry Callahan are really highly rated too. So O'Rourke has quietly built a really good team around him. And it's a very, very young Meath team, and that is why I wasn't getting my hopes up too high. Like, they're full backline lads. Flood, James O'Hare's played a couple of games, Adam O'Neill. Like, this is their first year. They're playing Division 2 football for the very first time, and you're seeing it with Kerry. Like, Kerry had only 5 players started the All-Ireland final at the weekend. An absolute shadow of the team we'd expect to see. Galway, while it feels like they're making a lot of changes and they're missing really important players like Walsh, Comer and Finnerty, still had 10 players who started that final last year, and they're getting a bit more out of the 4 or 5 lads they're bringing in. And even the new lads they're bringing in, it's Peter Cook and Ian Burke. So they're able to ingratiate the newer players like maybe Daniel Flaherty or even Owen Kelly, who's playing inter-county football really for the first time. They're able to integrate them a bit easier because they're playing with the main players and established players.
Yeah, okay, and I can see how it's very difficult to make any changes to Kerry in the power ranking on the basis of what we're seeing at the moment, because it's not the real...
It's not Kerry.
No.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting that they do look different when they start to bring the players back, even in the same game.
Isn't it scary how different or how good Clifford looked compared to everyone else? And there was I was at Clare Kildare, and I don't know how much you want to get into it, but there was a little bit of a bang of that off Daniel Flynn when he came on. Clearly wasn't fit. Like, nowhere near the power that you usually see Flynn showing in Croke Park when he could take on half the Dublin defence and put it in the top corner. But he was just, in that last 20 minutes, he was just operating on a different level to everyone else. Kicks a point off his left foot to equalise the game when he had no right to kick it. Dara Kerwin won a brilliant mark, dropped it short. Won the next ball, kicked it wide. Ben McCormick hit the post. Clare were 6 points down and they missed 3 shots in a row. Flynn gets his first touch and puts it over the bar. So I don't know, the difference between the very, very best in this sport and those that are very, very good can be quite stark sometimes. And I think we saw that at the weekend when David Clifford comes on, takes him 3 seconds, a hop, a skip, a bounce, and he puts the ball over the bar. And some of his points are freakish. And I don't really want to talk about Clifford because we're going to spend half the year talking about him.
No, but we should. I think actually
the difference.
Well, it because it was Maradona against Belgium, that photograph at one stage where, and then he just kicks it, and you're like, the super slow mo. If the photographer was just in the right place, you would have been able to put that right beside the picture of Maradona against Belgium and be like, yeah, this is what we're looking at here. This is the level of talent.
Yeah. And hey, the same applies probably to Jack McCaffrey's year. Like, I don't know, it did the heart a bit of good, I think, just to see, and I don't know whether it was the boots, but how fast he still was. And this is somebody who hasn't played club football. He hasn't gone to Boston and had a summer of football. He's just been living life. And he still had that ability and that pizzazz, Paddy Andrews described it as in the football pod this week, in his bones to just take on the Cork defence and pop the ball over the bar. So that was quite scary to see.
Tommy, a controversial moment, judging by social media, a controversial moment at the end of the Clare-Kildare match. Emmett McMahon getting blown up for a double hop. You couldn't see it in the shot. His kick went over the bar, did it?
So the double hop you're referring to happened in the first half.
Okay, sorry, right.
The controversial moment in Clare-Kildare was... So I scratch my head now. Now, I have to put it on the record and say Colm Collins came out after the game and refused, like, he wouldn't engage in any questions about the referee. He blamed his own team for the manner in which they went into their shells when they were 6 points up. They didn't attack. You could hear the Clare sideline roaring at the team to go forward, but it's that natural thing that where teams can sort of retreat into their shell when they're a man down and they're protecting the lead, or a man up and they're protecting the lead. But Clare never looked like coming back into it, never looked like getting a goal. A bad hand pass goes to the Clare keeper. He slips, touches the ball on the ground, ankle taps the Kildare forward, black card. Emmett McMahon goes into goals. He slips with his 2 kickouts. Clare retain possession on 1. Kildare go down and equalise, and then Kildare have one more attack and come down the right touchline, and they're actually going for goal. It looks like the Kildare forwards going for goal, even though a point will do. And Pierce Lillis makes an unbelievable block, but out of somewhere the referee gives a free. I haven't seen the highlights. I didn't see Teach Carr last night, but I don't know how it was a free. Anyways, McMahon's hop, he missed it. To be honest, there was a couple of odd decisions in that game, but like Kildare fans were tweeting me at halftime going crazy that the referee had completely ruined the game in them, that he was giving everything to Clare. I didn't see it that way. He gave, I don't know, Shane. Like, I just think refereeing is an impossible job at the minute.
Yeah, and
the umpires aren't helping enough. Yeah, the umpires aren't helping enough. The linesmen sometimes help out, but sometimes don't. It's not defined enough. I just think it's nearly an impossible job at the minute.
Kildare's start of the season was really bad in terms of the home defeat to Cork being so catastrophic in nature. It wasn't close. It wasn't a game. It was over at half time, and there was hope that they were going to be able to use the opening performance against Dublin, where we had expected Dublin to come out all guns blazing, and it was tight and close, and Kildare took a little bit of comfort from the fact they were able to come back into the game against the Dubs. It turns out everybody's going to be able to come back into the game against the Dubs, I think, this season. That if Dublin are going to win this year, they'll be squeaking it out down the stretch.
Especially it appears in the league, Ger, and potentially even in Leinster, and Leinster matters less than ever before when you look at the way the All-Ireland set up this year. Like, provincials actually don't matter. With the All-Ireland round robin series that's going to take place, and only 4 teams are going to be knocked out after the 16 team groups, the 4 groups of 4, only 4 teams are going to be knocked out. So it's going to be a weird year. But anyways, Dublin, you're right, teams are going to be in it, but their last 4 scorers after Lee Gannon got sent off were Brian Fenton, James McCarthy, Con O'Callaghan and Jack McCaffrey. So, when they're all there together, it's a pretty frightening prospect.
But Cork came right back into it. That's the thing. So, they're relying on those players, all of whom were in the shout for Player of the Year 4 or 5 years ago, right? And 3 years ago. But at the same time, they haven't moved on. That next generation, that production line has stalled. And I'm not quite sure. Eamon Fitzmaurice was talking about, he wasn't quite sure about what the identity of the team was, and they're not playing with smiles on their faces. I think Jack McCaffrey's going to put a smile back on their face. I think James McCarthy's going to put a smile back on their face too. And certainly, it's cavalry coming at an important time. But Lauro said the word has gone out in the Premier League, you go at Liverpool. And I think the word has gone out now, you go at the Dubs. And particularly, even if they get a lead on you, you keep going against them, because, I don't know, the advantage that they had in pace and power and physique, and the game was over before you went out, that's gone.
Are you saying they're mentally weak? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm saying that they're no longer 10 points up before the ball is kicked.
I like the sound of what you're saying, Ger, and I wonder when any inter-county managers listening in now roll a bit of Lauro in the dressing room before a game to go at them, go at the Dubs. And I think, to be honest, I think you're onto something. I don't know about the lack of smiles on the faces. I have a question, given the way the year is set up and how manic it's going to be in terms of the amount of games and the intensity of matches. I'd have a question over who is at proper championship level yet. James Horn had it in his column at the weekend that Mayo are already at a championship level condition. I'm not sure if they are or not. Like, we only really saw them in action for half an hour against Kerry and they completely tailed off in the second half. I wonder, have the Dubs just been going through an absolutely rotten training regime? We didn't see Jack McCaffrey until the weekend. Like, there's no way he wasn't ready to go a couple of weeks ago. They were just putting the hard yards into him.
He did look fit.
Building them. Do you know what I mean? Building them up.
And James McCarthy looked fit.
McCarthy looked fit. Do you know? And like, they're going to get Paul Mannion back too. Paddy Small is going to come back at some stage. I do think the Dublin's level beneath those players for whatever reason. The players. Maybe the level was so high during the 6 in a row that nobody else that could have been good enough could get a sniff. Like, maybe that level is just at a low bar and they aren't going to get any new players. But hey, if Desi Farrell comes through this league and he's discovered the fact that Jack McCaffrey and Paul Mannion can still play, it's no bad thing.
I know we're not dwelling on the power rankings. I know we're not, right? But Down are ahead of Kildare. Down are 12, Kildare 13. Down just lost it from Monaghan.
No, you're looking at a mistake there.
That's a mistake.
Down are 19.
Am I right in saying Monaghan 10, Roscommon 9, Donegal 8 was the last weekend?
Yeah,
we got to move Monaghan and Roscommon above. You certainly got to move Roscommon above.
Davy Burke's a big story.
That's the story.
Shane, you're looking at a mistaken graphic that was up in week 1.
Apologies, Tommy.
So Monaghan are 10, Donegal are 9, Roscommon are 8.
Fair enough. But Roscommon are going to move up. Like, I'm looking at the bench. And I'm not trying to G up. My housemate from Roscommon thinks I'm G'ing up.
Tommy's shifting uneasily here.
Yeah. Well, listen.
If you were the full back, you'd be expecting a thump around the head around now, Shane. But go on.
I know, yeah. But listen, Monaghan are playing Roscommon this weekend. I'm not trying to G them up, as my housemate thinks I'm trying to do this week of all weeks. Well, maybe a little bit I am, but
it's in Clonus, Shane.
It's in Clonus, of course.
Monaghan are fighting for their lives.
Yeah, Monaghan need the points more than Roscommon.
Monaghan have shown it over the last number of years that when they need to survive,
they're the cockroaches. Yeah, they are the cockroaches. I think Malachy Clerkin called them the cockroaches of Division 1. They will survive no matter what. But
that's certainly a way of putting it.
Look at the lads that came off the bench for Roscommon. Derek Craig, Conor Cox, Donny Smith. The strength and depth, and the G-ing up that Davy Burke does on the sidelines. I really like this Roscommon team.
I don't believe you. I think you've got a smirk that is just edging its way across your face. No, genuinely, yeah. Look at Roscommon. I have an awful soft spot for Roscommon. I have Roscommon people tweeting me at the weekend, where are your power rankings now? Where did they want them to go?
Higher than
James Dunn, said in the football pod this week, Roscommon are not going to win the All-Ireland. And I couldn't help it. My eyebrows raised. And Paddy ended up, what are you doing? What are you doing raising your eyebrows? Roscommon are not going to win the All-Ireland. And they were absolutely adamant that Roscommon cannot win the All-Ireland. I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
But I don't know how high I'm putting Roscommon yet, because I will put it on the record now that Davy Burke has done his job if he keeps Roscommon in Division 1. When Roscommon are playing Mayo 7 days after the league final, do they really want to be in a league final?
No, I think that that's clearly a problem with the scheduling of the league and the championship at the minute, and they need to work that out. But I would say that I don't think Roscommon are going to win the All-Ireland this year either. But I do think that we're getting to a point where Roscommon will give their fill of it to one of the teams we expect to win the All-Ireland. Yeah. If they were up against Derry or if they were up against Galway, and I'm talking out of Connacht, so like in an All-Ireland quarter-final, if they were up against Derry, if they're up against Tyrone, if they're up against the Dubs, if they're up against Kerry, I would expect Roscommon to be in the game with 20 minutes left to go. Now, I would still expect Kerry and Dublin and Tyrone to be able to handle their business. I would expect Galway to be getting stuck into some weird tribal nonsense that they don't fully understand, and any random stuff could happen. But like, in a way that I would not say for most other teams, no, that's a fait accompli. We know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be a 5 to 7 point victory, and that 5 to 7 point gap will open up in the first half and never get closed again. This team just looks a little bit dangerous. They've got a puncher's chance.
Yeah, no, I do think that you're right. I think they will cause problems, especially Mayo in that first game. The round robin series will give them a chance to cause problems again. I probably just haven't seen enough for Roscommon yet to know what's different. Like, I know a lot of those lads, and they've won a couple of Connacht titles, and they've won Division 2 league titles. There's medals in their back pockets. They were quality underage, and Roscommon have had this ability. And I think what they've done is there's been very, very little between the 10th best footballer in Roscommon and the 35th best footballer in Roscommon for the last 10 years. And I think what's happened is Davy Burke has come in and he started a blank slate and he's making them all fight for their places. And we're seeing Cox on the bench Donny Smith on the bench, Murtaugh's starting one day, Kieran Murtaugh's not starting another day when he was captain before, and there's that little bit more of a genuine manager bounce that we're seeing now, and we actually are seeing that. But like, they're going to clone us this weekend, and Monaghan are fighting.
Yeah,
they're fighting for their lives.
Big
like
game.
Armagh went down there, like Armagh butchered chances. What is wrong with Tyrone? Tyrone were in command of that game the first day around, and there was comment, I don't know, the crowd or something just dragged them over the line. They got 3 goals in the last 15 minutes.
Big game. One last thing that I did want to ask, right? There's still a quirk of fate where a good team from Division 2, through a bad run of results over the next 3 or 4 weeks, could end up in the Tailteann Cup. We won't know about that until, obviously, the end of the provincial championships. Would it be a disaster for a good team to go through the Tailteann Cup and have the experience that Westmeath had? Or are the good teams too up their own holes to be able to get the benefit of the Tailteann Cup?
I think you're right. I think you're spot on. I think the traditional counties, you might say, traditional, they're too up their own holes, to be honest. I don't think Meath want to be in the Tailteann Cup this year. I really don't think Cork want to be in the Tailteann. I think those two teams have designs on year 2 of the project they're in, of being good enough to be in Division 1 and stay in Division 1. And they want to replace, say, a Donegal or possibly a Monaghan at the minute. They want to replace where Kildare have been. That's where they fancy themselves and they see themselves. I don't necessarily think it'd be a good thing for Clare to slide into the Tailteann Cup, because they have operated in Division 2 for 7 years. They were a top 8 team last year. They have a lot of young players breaking through. They've won a Tommy Murphy Cup before. Don't think it did the county any good at the time. They've been in Division 2 is what they need. In saying that, what Westmeath got last year, I truly believe they're the second best team in Leinster at the minute. And that bounce in the Tailteann Cup gave it that. So, it isn't a bad thing, and I think a Down could get a huge benefit from a Tailteann Cup run. A Cavan, when it looks like they may be resigned to playing in the Tailteann Cup this year, could get a good run there too. So I'm not dissing the Tailteann Cup year. I just think you're right. I think some counties a little bit that they're too up their own holes. The traditional counties maybe, but it isn't really what's right for their progress right now.
Okay. Absolutely, we want reactionary power ranking, says Jamie Dominican. Rory Larmour, disgraced.
Dominican. That's a Roscommon name.
Dominican.
That's a Roscommon name. Yeah, Roscommon name.
I was Dominican. Jamie Dominican, is that him? Am I doing him justice?
That's a Rossi name. Yeah, there was a Peter Dominican a couple of years ago from Roscommon.
Rory Larmour, disgraced. There's no power rankings.
Monaghan.
Monaghan and Roscommon up 1 each. Donegal down 2, says Rory Larmour.
No.
Everybody wants this, Tommy. Everybody wants
Donegal down 2. Like, where are you putting Donegal? You're putting Donegal beneath Clare, who have lost 2 games, and Westmeath, who are in Division 3. Like, lads, the power rankings are perfect. They're spot on. Roscommon, if Tyrone get relegated, Roscommon might go above Tyrone. But, like, I don't see Roscommon going ahead of the 2022 Ulster champions Derry, who are in 6th place.
I think we just need to do these conversations every week and let the people decide. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Anyway,
maybe. All right.
Tommy,
Okay.
You see, you're too emotionally invested. You're attached to
I am emotionally invested. It's important, lads. They matter.
It is, but then they have to go up and down. Otherwise, they never change.
Roscommon.
My sanity matters too.
Well, okay, that's true. That's an important call, right?
Yeah.
The bookies have Roscommon 11th favourites to win the All-Ireland. 80-1. That's wrong. That's
wrong.
10
favourites.
10 favourites is Cork. They've Cork and Donegal ahead of them, and Monaghan ahead of them as well.
I wonder what Tyrone were after Kerry stuck the 7 goals past them.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to
That's
find
a
out.
good point. Yeah, fair
Tommy,
play, lads.
Excellent, good stuff. Football pod available wherever you get your football pods.
The football pod is out right now. Paddy's in Leuven. It's not Bruges, but it's just like it. He's in Belgium at the minute on a college trip. James was doing his homework this week. He's done a deep dive on the depth that's available to Porrick Joyce, because that chase for squad depth is so important this year. The lads give Meath their fill of it. There's a little bit of Paddy getting excited about the Dubs being back, and I asked the two boys the question that if there was a world where after 2 years of being in the football pod, they were to return to inter-county football, would they retain any of their pace? And they both agreed that they wouldn't. So, see you later, boys. Thanks.
The door is shut. There you go. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio for you today. 1 o'clock, OTB Gold is Wexford 56. Dadcast from 3. A career retrospective with Jim Beglin at 4. And Joe Malloy, meets Ruby Walsh at 6. And then Joe will be back with the show tonight from 7. Up next, Will O'Callaghan's Power Rankings.
You're listening
to OTB AM. OTB GAA.
I still get scared when I'm on my own and it's dark. I'll be very honest. And at times I don't like to be places that are no street lights and that type of thing, and kind of looking over my shoulder. I wouldn't put the earphones in as maybe I used to do. It's good to own it, and thanks for asking the question. It's good to talk about it too.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Will O'Callaghan. Will. Good morning to you, Will.
An ominous introduction, Ger. I would have went with good morning, Will.
That was insidious.
Good morning, Shane and Ger. How are you getting on, lads?
Did you and your colleagues / teammates, did you start a beef with the football pod overnight? With the hurling pod, claiming that hurling is the one true sport, the only pure manifestation of the Gael, and football is like basically shit.
Only James Skehill could have started such an argument overnight because, let's be fair, Paul Murphy is a dual All-Ireland winner and he's got plenty of respect for Gaelic football. For me, he is Kilkenny's Gaelic football man. So we distanced ourselves very much from Skehill's comments last night, but he trotted out the old line that it's easier to promote Gaelic football because there are fewer skills in Gaelic football than hurling, so you can take it up and just be an athlete who's got a few skills and you can play Gaelic football to a decent standard. While in hurling, there are too many skills that have to be learned from a young age for it to be promoted easily. And then, of course, that turned into Paul Murphy telling a story from when he was having a drink in Tipperary recently, and a man came up to him and said, there are 4 basic skills in Gaelic football, there are thousands in hurling. And Paul said, I'm just using this to illustrate a point. But Skehill has opened a war, definitely, with the football pod and the football community around the country. And we know what people are like. I just heard Tommy Rooney a moment ago say that he got a tweet from someone without any sense of irony whatsoever. Where are your power rankings now? Which really made me giggle this morning with the morning coffee. That someone would actually take the time to send a power ranking tweet. But that just goes to show how seriously people take it.
It's coming your way, Will.
Is that your official statement, Will? Hurling pod host O'Callaghan distances himself from scathing Skehill remarks?
you gotta ride with the one. Come on, it's your horse, ride it.
I don't think Skehill needs me to defend him. I think he can take on the waves of people that are going to come from. To an extent, I can actually see the point that he was making, albeit he made it far too strongly, and therefore we were.
He was right. He was right. Come on,
where are you going, Skehill?
We all know he was right.
What? There's only 5 skills in Gaelic football. Is that it?
Skehill is like Cuchulainn with his sabre, fighting the sea.
I think the 4 skills method was made by the drinking partner of Paul Murphy, to give Skehill a little bit of credit here. But to an extent, I can see where he's coming from, in that more coaching and definitely funding towards coaching is required in counties outside of the traditional hurling counties. And that was the wider debate that we were having, was trying to close the gap. And that's even going to come up when we talk about the power rankings in a few minutes' time, that there is actually a substantial gap between, say, the top 9 counties in the country and the chasing pack.
Tommy, I welcome you back to the show in anticipation of the Royal Rumble that's coming our way. Hurling pod versus football pod. A suitable venue that is both a hurling and a football field. I don't know if one exists in the country.
White collar, yeah.
Hey, Will, you're a coward. You could have done that when I was on air. I had to go off and leave my pancakes on the pan.
This is awkward.
What are you doing?
Hold on, how exactly am I a coward here when I've just explained what Skehill said last night, and the fact that I think towards the end of the conversation he went, Paddy Andrews and the boys probably aren't going to be happy about this. So go on, Tommy. Yeah. What's your reaction?
I'm just very surprised you say that. Like I'm a football man at heart. I can appreciate hurling from afar, but saying that there's only 4 skills in Gaelic football, what planet?
Kicking, fisting, fighting. And
no, I think long kicking, dragging, hand pass were 3 of the 4 anyway.
And what is there in hurling? You get it, you puck it, you fight for it. That's it.
Oh, the roll lift, the jab lift.
I shouldn't have come back on, lads. I'll leave you at it. I'm a football snob though, so
the very
look at your power
rankings at the moment.
Something started here, Tommy. Enjoy your pancakes. Thanks very much.
See you, lads. Bye bye.
Nice one, Tommy. At least Will had the ability and the desire this morning to do the power rankings. Do you know, he's not cowarding away from it. I'll give you credit there, Will.
Oh yeah, after Tom's gone.
Well, sorry. Bring him back.
Come on back, Tommy. Click the Zoom link again.
Right.
No, it's surely it's a cop-out that there wasn't a football power rankings. I sat through the whole conversation with Tommy and I was expecting the power rankings were going to kick in at some point, because we're now doing a hurling power rankings after 2 rounds where the vast majority of teams were inside the top 6 have hurled nowhere near their first teams.
Well,
and Tommy's got more of a supply of games to actually update his power rankings on.
I didn't intend for this to turn out into a shade against your colleague, but sure, look, we are where we are. Brono Brainon, I missed this one earlier and I meant to get to it. I'm sorry. How are we not getting the power ranking? It's the best part of the GEA show, and I'm a hurling man, first and foremost. #disgrace.
Well, he should be doubly happy now.
Yeah, because there's been shade thrown on the general sport of football as well, and I think it's kind of fairly emblematic of who we are as a people, that we can't all be friends. We should just...
Well, hurling football people.
We should just stop pretending that we can all be... Anybody.
Why can't we be friends?
Well, because it's in our DNA. Right. We've made the same... Hurling only exists in 18 counties, right? That's what we've decided. Well,
yeah, by all means, if you want to send off in the live chat at the moment or the comments after this section and you want to say that we should be expanding this out further and looking at Division 3 down, by all means do. But what I've done is I've broken this down from Division 2A up to the top of Division 1. And yeah, if you want to see the other counties, by all means do. We had this argument last year and you were complaining, oh, you're forgetting about a whole load of counties. And the truth was, we would then throw up one single graphic where I would say, right, here's where we are from, I think it was 26 we went to last year, 26 to 18, we wouldn't discuss them whatsoever. And you'd want to get to number 5 and 4 and argue, hey, why are Cork ahead of Clare? Or why are Clare not ahead of Cork? So if people wanted to expand out, by all means, we'll do another graphic. But I thought it made sense to cut a line at the end of Division 2A for the first power rankings this year.
A bit partitionist in your logic, I would have to say. But anyway, let's move on.
There are counties here from all 4 provinces. So
yeah, but it's the hurling people not looking down on. I'd say if you live in the small pocket, the 2 senior hurling clubs in one of the counties who don't exist in our 25 county or 18 county list here, then you're feeling like, of all of the people who betrayed me, it's the hurling folk.
Are you saying
send me a tweet that says, where are your power rankings now, or where is my county on the power rankings now, and we'll reconsider for 2 weeks' time.
Will is the oppressive colonial overarching enemy, is that what you're saying? Of hurling?
Yeah. You know that the one who actually pretends to be there's a line in Severance which is like you give people the illusion of freedom and they never realise they're prisoners. That's what we're doing here with these people.
Offaly's Kings County, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. 18 is Derry. I wasn't
expecting highbrow philosophy early in the morning, but go on.
18 is Derry, 17 is Carlow, 16 is Down, 15 is Kildare, 14 is Kerry and 13 is Offaly. I think we're coming for you. I think Hardy's doing a great job and we'll see as the season goes on.
This is an important weekend for Kildare, Ger. They go away to Derry. Kildare have won their first 2 games, and if they were to win that, someone is dropping points, if not both teams, in Offaly against Kerry at Fitzgerald Stadium on Saturday afternoon. So Kildare have got a chance to steal a march on those 2 teams. I think it's going to be 2 of those 3 that get to the final in Division 2A this year, Offaly, Kerry or Kildare. But it's a big weekend for Kildare after getting a great result against Down last time out. Down are up against it a little bit after losing 2 games against promotion contenders so far this year. And I don't know, I think we'll be probably flipping 14 and 13 if Kerry can get a result at the weekend. Just very unusual to see Kerry playing a hurling game in Killarney as opposed to Tralee this weekend.
Down obviously up against it as well, given that they come from that kip Ballycran, which we now all have, apparently that's how we're supposed to refer to it.
So Ger was the Meath Piero then.
I think that poor whoever it was is probably just telling their truth and they're no longer part of the I thought that was a bit harsh. Everybody's entitled to make their mistake.
It was a reminder never to be logged into the wrong account when you decide to go wild with your comments on a Sunday afternoon.
And is Ballycran? I've never been. Maybe we should all go up and investigate for ourselves.
Do a roadshow up there, maybe.
I to be honest, I didn't think I saw the highlights in that game. I didn't think the surface looked that bad that day. It actually was one of those days where if you're going to have a pop at a pitch, it probably wasn't the right day to do so. But anyway, 12
is Laois, 11 is Westmeath, 10 is Antrim, 9 is Dublin, 8 is Wexford, 7 is Tip. Is this the lowest Tipperary I've ever been in anybody's power rankings ever, I wonder?
Well, obviously, look, it's somewhat reflective of where we're coming from, where Tipperary were last year, because otherwise we wouldn't be doing the power rankings. We'd just say, look, here's the Division 1B and 1A tables and let's set the teams up that way. But Tipperary have shown some very impressive traits so far in the way that they've hurled. Now, they've been very unlucky, obviously, with the 3 injuries that they picked up last week. I'm sure they would have been hopeful that Bubbles O'Dwyer could play some part this year. He's now retired. What a remarkable player he was in 2016 and 2019 particularly. But Tipperary will have O'Mara this year not travelling. They're finding a few two players into different positions. Like Bonamara at 14 is very interesting to put a workhorse in there as opposed to putting Callan or Ford closer to goal this season. Breen at fullback is a bit of a new idea as well, and Ronan Mara at number 6. So clearly Liam Cowell has come in with ideas with guys that he's worked with before. And there was a savage intensity to the way that Tipperary hurled in Nolan Park. They got a first win there in the league since 2008, just before the break. And I got sent a graphic from GA Analysis during the week, which is GA Insights. And he read a very fair point, which is that Tipperary hurled quite differently under Liam Cowell compared to the last 2 years. And the graphic he sent me showed the amount of turnovers they got to score from the opposition puck out against Kilkenny, which was 1 goal and 6 points the last day at Nolan Park. That compares to 1-8 in the entire championship season of 2022, so across 4 games. Jeez. Or 1-4 in the 3 championship games in 2021.
Okay.
So clearly Tipperary in the last regime were not doing enough turnover on the opposition puck out, and they were manically going after it in the Kilkenny game. So that's a remarkable change in the way they've been playing.
Okay, and that doesn't merit a place in the top 6 for you?
Not quite yet, because I don't think anyone in the top 6 has done a huge amount wrong, and they come in with a certain amount of credit from last year. But Tipperary definitely look upwardly mobile. And then there's always that question, lads, about Liam Cowell, where people have been going, hey, maybe this is a bit like Waterford last year. Maybe Tipperary have put in a really intense pre-season and maybe they're going at the league. I don't think that's actually the case. I think that Liam Cowell is a manager who can come in and have a direct impact on a team. We saw that Waterford, who were at a reasonably low ebb when he took over in 2020, got them to an All-Ireland final that year. I'm a firm believer, and I remember we talked about this last year towards the end of the season, that there are some very good hurlers in Tipperary.
Yeah.
And there's now a management team who've come in that know them intimately, that I think can get them into a really good order coming around to the Munster Championship.
And there's one significant difference between the Waterford group and this Tipperary group, that there are still players in the Tipperary group who understand exactly what it takes to win All-Ireland. I think I would have Tipperary ahead of... so you've got Waterford, let's do your final graphic here. Waterford 6, Cork 5, Clare 4, Galway 3, Kilkenny 2 and Limerick 1. A few things stand out for me here. You're talking about credit in the bank from last year. What's Cork? What are they? Cork and Waterford ahead of Tip.
Yeah, look, Cork have been very impressive in their first 2 games in the league, though. Like, they went to Salthill the last day, scored 4 goals and 24 points and ripped Galway to shreds at times with their running game. And the second half performance that Cork put in against Limerick was really impressive at Páirc Uí Chaoimh, where I think the vast majority of watchers on TV that night, or the 20,000 or so that were in the park, would have thought Cork 8 points down against the Limerick team. This is probably going to be a fairly facile victory for Limerick in the second half. And then Cork went very directly at them. They pushed up a lot higher in the pitch, and they showed that they've got plenty of goals in this team. And even the last day, when you consider that they didn't have Robbie O'Flynn, who was injured after scoring against Limerick the week before, they didn't have Patrick Horgan, that Cork team still carried a massive threat. They're getting to a point now where Joyce is settling in very well at centre half back, which was a little bit of a problem position. And then there's enough movement and work rate within the forwards that we've seen in the first 2 games to indicate that Cork are going in the right direction. But I am always very aware that we're talking about teams who are mixing and matching their players at the moment. It's incredibly early in the season. And we remember Cork had the wettest of sails this time last year when they beat Kilkenny at home, went to a league final, then didn't perform really in the league final and didn't really set the summer alight. Just about got enough performances to get out of Munster, but we didn't really feel that Cork were threatening for an All-Ireland last year.
No. I would have Tip slightly ahead of them, to be honest, but Waterford I wouldn't have there just yet, I don't think. Clare, okay, I don't know what the story is with Clare, given that we're only seeing them reintegrate their best players into the team. And then Galway and Kilkenny. Why are Kilkenny second?
Look, Kilkenny were a team who pushed Limerick to a puck of a ball in an All-Ireland final last year, and Kilkenny, we have to kind of reserve judgment a little bit until we see the real Kilkenny. Like, this is a common theme across all the teams towards the top, in that TJ Reid is unlikely to play a whole lot of hurling for the rest of the league. We're not sure at this stage how bad the hamstring injury is for Oisín Mullen, so it could be a few weeks before he's integrated back into the team. So it'll be a while before we see Kilkenny's first 15. But when Kilkenny had questions asked about them last year, Leinster final against Galway, they beat Galway quite comprehensively. They beat a Clare team who were coming off the back of all the form that they had in the Munster Championship in an All-Ireland semi-final, and they died in their shield in the All-Ireland final against Limerick. That's why I think I'm keeping Kilkenny just ahead of Galway at the moment.
It was a last dance. Last year was a last dance, though. This year is not a last dance.
Or maybe this year is an evolution of both style and players, and they've got Derek Lynn coming in. It's a fresh voice, and Kilkenny will just work their way into the season. So again, I wouldn't have huge concerns about the Tipperary game. I would be a little bit worried about the fact they conceded 2-13 in the first half of that game, but they showed a bit of a fight back in the second half. And Kilkenny should beat Laois this weekend. They should qualify, I think, as one of the top two in Division 1B come the end of it and get to a semi-final. But Kilkenny's aspirations, I think, are a bit later in the year again. As you mentioned, for Clare, it's so hard to make an assessment of Clare right now when you have Conlon and Kelly in the stands the last day against Limerick watching the game, when you don't have Shane O'Donnell playing. Clare missing so many of their key players, particularly in attack at the moment. That's very hard to make a judgment, but they'd be really disappointed. They went half an hour without a score away from home against Limerick, and really the final scoreline in that game at the Gaelic grounds was glossed over a little bit by the way that Clare finished the game. They really went long stages struggling for scores in that match.
Do we get new manager bounces often in hurling, Will? Like, I mean, look, it's a sport with so many more than 4 skills, so it's quite tough for managers to have their say. Like, can it be quite difficult for teams to bed in the first year, looking at the likes of Waterford and Kilkenny?
No, look, again, I think sometimes you'll find, and we talked already about Liam Cowell's impact when he came in Waterford, that sometimes a new voice can be enough to re-energise a good group of players. And like, I stand over the fact that Waterford last year looked like they had such a deep panel and they had everything in place to actually go and challenge Limerick. Waterford, I don't know what went wrong with them last year. I hope that Waterford have worked out within their own camp what went wrong, particularly after the Limerick defeat in the Munster Championship, where they went out so tamely in Munster after that, having been the league champions. I still think this is a very, very talented group of Water players. I think Davy Fitzgerald has got a proven track record of coming in, not just as a new manager bounce, but coming in and organising a group of players. He has been, I think, quite clever in the first 2 games against Dublin and Laois, where he's been bringing Ozzie Gleeson off the bench. He didn't overplay Desi Hutchinson when he had third level commitments. You saw Mikey Kiley, what he did for UL in the Fitzgibbon Cup at the weekend. And then slowly but surely, as these players start to come back to fitness and some of the new players get integrated in, we'll probably get to see a bit more of the real Waterford over the next few weeks. And that Waterford team have got everything primed to actually be quite good this summer. The problem is, for all the teams that we're talking about right now, and you could probably throw a blanket from 2 right back to 7 currently, is that Limerick, if this was not a power rankings ladder and we were actually doing this with a gap, Limerick are considerably ahead. Like we talked about Clare and the players that weren't there. There were so many pictures that were taken in the stands in the Gaelic grounds where you're looking at players of the year, former All-Stars who were sitting in the stand watching Limerick with a reasonably new group of players across the team just implement exactly the same style of hurling, which is scary for all the chase and pack, to be honest.
And still no official word on Aaron Glan and what involvement or otherwise he's going to have with the Limerick hurlers this year, so we shall wait and see. Well, good stuff. That was this year's first episode of the Hurling Power Rankings. Cheers.
Take it easy.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
Danny Mac1 says 4 skills in football, that's being very kind.
Tommy Rooney just shuddered somewhere.
Tommy's right. Armagh wasted so many chances. That game should have been over 5 minutes into the second half. Roscommon have no chance in the All-Ireland series. I think Tommy was raising his eyebrows at the lads saying, like, look, no, I don't think anybody is credibly saying, but I think if they continue on this trajectory, they're gonna take somebody out who they shouldn't take out.
But why shouldn't they take out a Tyrone? Why shouldn't they?
Because they're not supposed to. Tyrone are an All-Ireland contender, and that's how this whole thing works. That's how it's supposed to work.
Do people really think that Davy Burke and the Roscommon players don't think they can win the All-Ireland? Because they absolutely do think they can win the All-Ireland.
Yeah, but I mean, whether or not you think you can win the All-Ireland doesn't actually mean the rest of us have to think you're right.
No, but but it's important that within the camp you believe it, or otherwise you have no chance.
Well, that's actually not true either. Stephen Gerrard famously said, well, we're not going to win the Champions League, and Rafa Benitez had head off him, and then they did go win the Champions League, and it took Stephen Gerrard a little bit of genius against Olympiacos or whoever it was.
Reverse psychology.
John's logic about Sheringham doesn't add up, says Shifty Lads. He played for a very bad team, yet he won Players Player of the Year. He was a star in the England team, and he proved how good he was moving to United late in life. I like John, however he said he's impartial but leaves Saul Campbell out. The colour green doesn't suit him, says Micheál O'Connor, who I suspect is an Arsenal fan. Kyle Walker in the mix, not even mentioned.
I think this is why Berbatov doesn't get it mentioned either, because he left United in acrimonious circumstances. Ferguson was accused of tapping him up. I don't know. I think the way a player finishes their career at a club certainly sours a taste.
The Scott Penny debate was interesting a little bit earlier on. We were talking to Alison Miller about it. Tom F1 Dublin 1 says Ree Penny, he competes against Doris, Baird, Van der Fleer, Will Connors, Ruddock, Max Deegan. He's played in 54 matches, started 42, scored 25 tries for 125 points. Now tell me he doesn't deserve his chance. Kevin McAvoy says Penny's an unreal talent and without doubt a future Irish number 7. Ask any of the other provinces, could they have him? They would all snap your hand off for him. There was definitely an overreaction in the comments from somebody saying that he was miles behind Timothy and somebody else and comparing him to an AIL player. The guy is clearly incredibly talented, so we'll see.
Oh yeah.
And the Ireland selectors have decided that they want to put him in the squad. But here's the thing: he's not in the team. He's not in the Matchday 23. He's part of that wider squad. He was part of the Emerging Ireland tour as well. Like, we've seen players get to that level, and then they have a look at you and they see how well you integrate, and they see how quickly you respond to what they challenge you with in the training environment, and then you either make it or you don't.
Yeah.
Like, and so he's in that part of it. They've obviously had a look at some of the other players, like your favourites, whoever your team's best underrated player is according to you. And at the moment, they've been sent back to the club team, the province, to try and bed down or improve to a point where there's genuine competition there, or that they can be trusted to play for the first team. This isn't some gross conspiracy against your province. Like, it really isn't.
That's what people like to believe, though, isn't it? He brings some positive attributes. The penny's clearly dropped for Andy Farrelly. Brings something new into that squad. This idea that it's a Munster versus Leinster thing is ridiculous. It's not. Sorry, can I also mention as well, and this was brought up in the press conference I was at with Jack Conan last week, the fact that I'm nearly right in saying, haven't we won our last 2 Grand Slams away in Twickenham and in Cardiff? Have we any idea what this could do on Paddy's weekend? This could be something else. Do you think the players are actually thinking about the fact that this is a home Grand Slam, like, which is incalculably better than winning an away Grand Slam?
I mean, it's obviously better. I'd say, yeah, of course they've thought about it. They've talked about it, like
this idea that they go game from game and we're only thinking about Italy.
Well, no, they've said that only a championship or Grand Slam this year is going to represent success. Like, a championship is still, you win the championship, but if they were to win the championship by losing on the last day against England, if we were to win it on points or whatever, it
tarnishes it.
Not quite the same, folks. Not quite the same.
Maybe it tempers expectations for the World Cup. Maybe it's exactly the result we need.
Jack Rudder says pancakes are trash. Fried dough, most overrated thing in history. I think you're just doing it wrong, Jack. Basically, you just need to improve your technique and performance, and you'll be grand. OTB AM brought to you live 20 by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. On tomorrow's show, Real Madrid versus Liverpool reaction. Derek McNamara analyses the figures ahead of the Six Nations return this weekend. We've got Around the World with Hannon. Kathy McNamee is live from Marbella. That's the tough gig this week with Vera Pauw's team and much more besides. Right now, Pat Nevin on last night's football show. See you tomorrow.
Manchester City then have one of those days. There are signs of life at Liverpool. Manchester United are suddenly 3 points off City, and things are not so pleasant for Graham Potter at Chelsea. Loads to get through. It has been a long time. Pat Nevin, long time no talk. Hello.
Hello. I've been a wee bit busy. I've been on once or twice, but we've kind of missed each other.
We have.
Time and again. But calm down. Normality again. Other than the fact I've done 5 games in 10 days. So it's been bizarre. And I've seen all the big teams. Like, I've been to see Arsenal. They played Brentford last week. Went to see Spurs over in Milan. And then Chelsea, Dortmund. And then I was at the Manchester City game at Forest at the weekend as well. So seeing a whole bunch of games at the moment. But none of the big teams win when I go to see them.
Can we start with Chelsea? Super interesting at the moment.
It is. It's extraordinary. I mean, there was a massive whisper. I don't know if you heard it. There was a big hint going around yesterday that Graham Potter would be relieved of his duties. I heard it from about 7 or 8 different sources. You know, and I'm not talking online. I'm talking media sources and people that usually know what they're talking about. But it would seem that Todd Bowley's come out and said, no, we're going to stick by him. This is a long-term plan. It's not going particularly well just now. But the kind of theory behind it, they seem kind of strong with. And I have to say, I'm beginning to feel a wee bit lonely in this because I get it. I absolutely get it. And it's not pro-Chelsea or anything. It's just all those kids. And expecting them to go and waltz in and be a decent Premier League team right altogether. Now, they cost a fortune. An absolute ridiculous fortune. But the vast majority of that team's 23 or under. And it's going to take a wee while for them to gel. And if what they said at the start when they came in, Bowley and his group, that this was holistic, this was a build, this was a complete change in not just personnel but outlook. Well, this is the biggest test they're ever going to get. They're not winning games, they're not scoring goals, they're probably not going to get Champions League. They could be out of the Champions League itself in a couple of weeks' time because they're one down already. So that's a big test of whether, what they said at the start, if they're going to stick by it. I'm sure I've said it before, I kind of think they will. I just kind of think they will. They see quality players and they see something, but they just can't score a goal. Full stop.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. On paper, their plan made perfect sense and was very interesting. Let's go for this more holistic, patient project. And you can see how they arrived at thinking that was the way to go here. You could argue there's a level of inexperience about that hierarchy, though, which doesn't take into account what we have seen time and time and time again in football. There is a lack of rationale at times to media criticism, and we'll come to Potter is just far too reasonable in just a moment. But there is a lack of fairness to that, and that builds its own momentum. And then there is a toxic element which comes in the stands. And again, that can be difficult to turn. And a dressing room is subsequently lost. And I'd say it's easier to lose when you have 33 players in that dressing room, blinking black at you, going, well, how's this meant to work in training every day? There's 33 of us. What do we do? And so you can arrive at a point where the whole thing unravels and the only easy-ish reset is change a manager. And I just wonder if they've underestimated that whole sphere.
They may have. I would give you the alternative argument. I'm just giving you the alternative argument, which is, yeah, they've got far too many players. A whole bunch of them are not going forward with them. But you can't get rid of them that easy. They will feel as if they have the group that they want going forward, which will generally be the young ones by the start of next season. We've had a season under their belt. Have they got the cojones to say, right, I know you're all fed up. I know we're getting pelters, as we say in Scotland, from the press and from social media and from everywhere. But we believe in this. And the reason why I think they will, and because I've kind of done it before. I've thought, right, no, I know why you're all having a dig, and I know that you all see the headlines that don't look good just now. But I'm looking at the kind of the basics, and then they're okay, they're fine. The plan, and it might just be someone whose glass is always half full, And like I watched the first half against West Ham recently, they were utterly brilliant. I mean, honestly, Chelsea were brilliant. The game against Dortmund is one of the best games I've seen this season. It's absolutely fantastic. And there was some great stuff, some great opportunities. And they should have scored a couple of goals, at the very least, against a good European side away from home. And 1-0 was pretty unfair on them. Probably a draw would have been a fair result, but 2-2 or a 3-3 draw would have been there. I didn't get to see the whole game at the weekend there. But certainly in some of the games recently, the part of the game against Fulham, it's fine, it's okay. Here's one argument. Do you know if you win the league, or if you're in the top four, there's this kind of rule. You give away a goal a game or less, right? And that gets you top four every single season. Chelsea are a goal a game, they're losing. They're fine, they're okay back there. It's all right. So there's one problem. They're now creating chances, which they hadn't done before, but they're not finishing them. So that was another problem. So that's kind of nicked off as well. You still get the biggest problem you've got. The biggest problem in the game is actually scoring these goals and actually putting away these chances. Now, if they believe, actually, this is just weird, that's, it's a run of a number of young players that are just getting together, a bit of bad luck on top of that, a whole bunch of injuries as well. If they believe that, they need to stick with, they don't need to, they might stick with Graham Potter. But it's tough, because there's very, very few people on side now. A lot of the fans turned it during the game there. Had they been in Dortmund, they wouldn't have. That, and that's only 4 days before. So you have to have a longer view when you're running a business. And if you believe in what you've put in place, then you should stick with it and have a go. The other argument is Mikel Arteta's first season. 8th, was it? They ended up. And everybody, you can't just try and think back. Everybody wanted them out, including a vast swathe of the Arsenal fans wanted them out. And look at them now. It's pushing it a wee bit, but you could make the argument that Pep Guardiola was getting slaughtered. Certainly on TV, he was getting slaughtered for how can you play out for the back? That doesn't work in English football. And we had that discussion at the time. So if you believe that Potter's got the answers, and you believe that these young players, not all, but most of them will develop and will become top players in 2, 3, 4 years' time, that's why you give them 8-year contracts, then maybe you do stick with it. And maybe you don't buy in the next hired gun who only wants to stay there for a year and doesn't develop it.
Yeah.
So that's their holistic thinking. That's not my thinking. That's their holistic thinking. And that's why I've said all along, I think I know what they're trying to do. And I think they're going to stick with it.
The conversation around Potter is really interesting. So it's kind of frustrating in some respects because winning cures all, and if he was fiery and criticising referees and running onto the pitch and gesticulating and all of the things that people are saying he's currently lacking, too reasonable is one of the main complaints. If he was doing all those things and they were still on this current run of form, you can bet your bottom dollar people would be saying he needs to be calm, he's operating at a higher level here, he needs to show more composure. So I get the nonsensical aspect to some of the criticism. However, there is perhaps something in the point people are making about there is I don't know, is it ego or sense of self or presence that it seems to be required at these big clubs, and people would say, Moyes at Manchester United never filled that seat in his demeanour, and that is part of the role. Harshly or otherwise, that would be the criticism of Moyes. Where are we in our thinking when it comes to Potter and just how he has sat into that Thomas Tuchel-sized vacancy demeanour-wise?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because that's a very football attitude, with it for business, for any business. If you're a management or a controller, it has to be a big ego. I am the man. It's all one-dimensional, and that's the way to do it. Not all businesses work that way. Some do. Some work really well that way.
Chelsea traditionally have worked very well that way. Bigger the ego, the more comfy you are in that chair.
And they got hammered for it. But in the end, that's not their business model. And I think their business models, I think it's more along the lines of, look around. Who are the ones that are doing well? Well, Liverpool did well. How long did they have their manager for? Arsenal doing well. They've kept with the manager. Manchester City did well. They've kept with the manager. If you chop and change and chop and change and chop and change, it's going to cost you that £500 million every year. And I don't think they fancy it, really. I think they think, no, let's see if we can get something that's kind of looks planned, that, will bear fruit in a period of time. I'll be honest with you, at the start, and I'm absolutely honest with you, and I would hold my hands up now, I thought it was scattergun. I thought it was a mess. I thought, Koulibaly and Aubameyang and all that. I'm thinking, really? Where does that all fit? But it's clearly, it was just they had to get numbers in quick because they hadn't been able to buy players for such a long time, and they lost a number of players after, they were banned from buying players in during the sanctions. So, look, I get that. That was extremely, and it seemed like a lot of money at the time. Why are you spending 40s and 50s and 60 million pounds on like Cucurella? And then you look at them now and you think, that's not a lot of money actually for them. That's actually, they can seem to be able to afford it. I'm intrigued. Do you know what I would like? In a personal way, yes, in a personal position, I'm giving you what I think they're thinking is right. And I can see it now. I couldn't kind of see it before. It looked a bit scrambled, but I can see it now. And I think they actually seem to be balls enough to stick by it for the moment, which I'm kind of happy they are. Because I would love to know how it turns out. I'd like to know how this one turns out. Because if you've got João Felix, if you've got Mudryk, if you've got, Enzo Fernandez, if you've got Havertz, who's only 23 as well, if you've got all those young players at the back are coming through, Reece James, 22, you put all of them and give them 2 years together. I'm really interested with a manager who's known for building, who's known for, improving players, and he's actually got nobody from the outside. You talk about that big squad, that's fine if that big squad is older pros are fed up. Say it's not. Say it's younger pros that you can manipulate and you can mould. That's interesting to see where that going. I'd love to see it, because you hardly ever see it in football. I'd be intrigued to see it. May not work, but I'd like to see it. And the one thing I'm seeing now and again with Chelsea when I watch them, they're kind of better to watch at the moment.
Yeah.
They're not scoring any goals.
No, I give you that.
They're really good to watch.
And your sense of, like, when you, let's compare him to his immediate predecessor. Tuchel arrived, first game, changed the formation, made sense of this supposedly unbalanced squad, gave an interview afterwards which just spoke confidence. I remember watching that lunchtime kickoff that Saturday, can't remember who they played at Stamford Bridge, and I thought, wow, this is instant. So Potter, like, he's made a few missteps. They're like, even his interview post-match at the weekend, talking about, we had a few enforced changes and talking, in these terms, and that just doesn't cut it when you look at what Southampton have to play with, his confidence levels. I mean, so you talk about 2 years' time. Is he going to survive 2 years' time, being scrutinised this way? Fans, that I'm less sure. What's your sense of him and his internal attitude to this whole situation?
Well, I have a suspicion that the thing that's been said about his technical ability as a manager, I don't have a problem. I think he's fine. I think he's good enough of a good level manager. With the money he's got and the personnel he's got, I think he's fine. That other side you're asking for, that's the most interesting part, because he's never had this. Very, very few managers get this level of scrutiny and get hammered like this to this level. He's had a lot of jobs in the past, and there's enough pressure in jobs when you're near relegation or you're having difficult times. There's enough pressure in them, when if you get sacked for this job, you don't know how you're going to pay the rent. It's not that type of pressure now. It's a different type of pressure now. And it's no one... everyone who says they can cope with it completely without caring is not telling you the truth, right? So he's feeling it and he's learning it. I don't know how he'll come out the other end of it. It will be intriguing to see. I think he'll be hardened slightly by it. He will be hardened by it. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe hardening up in this white-hot heat that you need to get, that he's going to be put in now. Because in 2 years or 1 year, 2 years' time, probably 1 year, I would say, not even 2, the expectation is your top 4 minimum. I mean, then you're not mucking about now, right? Okay, you've had that period. Now, do it. Let's see. And by the way, where you're winning, we want to be enjoying it and we want to be entertained. We want to see something special and something different. So that's not going to go away. That level of pressure and that level of expectation is never going to go away as long as he's at Chelsea. So how he copes with it, and it's in simple terms, you get back to everything else. We could talk around a lot of things. If he wins 2 or 3 games in a row, or if he had won 2 or 3 games in a row, he wouldn't be bothered. He'd be all right. He'd be fine. And that's all it comes down to. Nothing else than that. We can skip around a lot of things with him, but he'll be looked upon as a sphinx-like character who knows what he's doing as soon as he gets 2 or 3 wins. But it's looking tough just now, because you look at the run, Spurs at the weekend, away from home.
Yeah.
That's not going to be easy. And of course, Chelsea fans, you're angry when you get beat by anyone. You're furious when you get beat with Spurs on the end of a stinker of a run. So
be interesting. I quite respect he hasn't done something cheap like get involved with a referee or lost the plot on the sideline. He's been true to himself, and the criticism of these managers can just be so silly at times. Arsenal, we'll touch on in a moment, do their thing against Villa in the end. You were at City Forest. So Guardiola said it was a very good performance, and I like most people, I suspect, I saw the highlights and I just watched City miss chance after chance after chance, and then the sucker punch came. Is that a fair reflection of the game?
I would say at half-time, a fair result would have been 5-0.
Okay.
And also, it was 86-87% possession, but good possession.
Yeah.
Getting behind the lines, playing at a really high tempo. Foden was super down the right, certainly Grealish was not bad. He was, in fact, good down the left. Goes down too easily, we know that. But they were really up for it. They were battling, they were chasing, they were making chances, they were getting into prime positions, and it wasn't falling for them. And then it kept on going, and the chances kept on coming. And I have to say, I thought they were brilliant for about 55-ish minutes, 60. And then just, when the second goal didn't come, a couple of things happened. Forest changed their system, which well done, by the way, brilliant. They didn't change it when they went a goal down. They were clever because they changed when they go goal down. They're still under the caution, they get shredded, right? But they waited and they waited and they waited, and it was the old rope-a-dope thing where if you get the wrong punch now, you're out, right? But they held on and they held on. When they made the changes, you could see the uncertainty just coursing through. It was about 67, 68 minutes, can't remember, roughly about then. And I was doing a commentary and I said, hey, this isn't over. Oh dear, I can see this has just changed now, totally changed. And Pep Guardiola, having gone mad for a while, then started sitting down, as if to say, oh God, I've spotted that too. And he said the opposite in his press conferences, but you don't take a hint of that. And it was brilliant tactics by Forest. They then actually took control of the game. So, yeah, for City, 99 times out of 100 in that game, they win it, and they win it comfortably, and everyone's cooing about how great they were. And it just needed one of those chances to go in. And it was a brilliant performance, but they weren't able to keep up for 90. And by the end, I was not even slightly surprised that Forest got the equaliser. Not saying they absolutely deserved it, but they fought and they battled, and that's just the way you need to do it against City. And I thought technically they were superb. They knew where the weakness was, and everybody, the dogs and cats in the street, know where the weakness is. They've not got a left back, so eventually you're going to get a chance down there, and that's exactly what happened.
And did he go with Silva at left back, or what was the formation?
Yeah, well, no, clever. So I would say clever, over clever again.
Yeah.
So he does that where Silva is the one who stands in left back position, but as soon as they've got the ball, they go to a 3-2-4-1, right? And so basically Silva's not there, they've just got back three, that's fine. When they lose the ball, he covers in the area and you've got back four and he's the left back. And that's fine, because see if the opposition ain't got the ball, which they didn't have, for 86%, it doesn't matter. My wee sister could play there. It's not important because there's nothing to defend. But when they started losing control of the midfield, then you just thought, no, get a fullback in there. No, you need somebody. Need Aki on there. You need to cover that now, because you're now getting stressed in that position. And Pep didn't make the move quick enough, and they lost the goal from precisely that area. And it's really clever until it's not clever, and that's exactly what it was. And had they scored the second and third goals, it would have been genius, because he's played three with two set midfielders, and Silva was unmarkable when he was going forward. Really, really smart. And again, 95%, 98% of the time that works, and it didn't this time. But he didn't change it quick enough.
It is too clever by half, really, in many ways. Like, I don't know what atmosphere Cancelo was contributing to behind the scenes, but could it not have been sorted out, you wonder? And equally, when you pack Zinchenko off to Arsenal, that you're left in this situation. There are not many managers who would have so much credit in the bank that they could stand over that and not be shipping a lot of criticism.
Yeah, and also, if some of the thick as me can see it coming. I'm just saying, get Aki on. It's okay, he can do that. You've stuck him there before. He's one of these players who can play all the positions, including left back, and he's fine. He just do a good, sensible job in left back, and great, fantastic. And it was shouting and screaming and crying out to happen. Of course, that's from a more simplistic viewpoint than the way that Pep looks at it. And then by the end of the season, how many times will have played that trick and it's worked? And if they end up with a league championship, then he was right. Sometimes it doesn't. The old Mourinho thing, it doesn't matter if I get it wrong. Got it wrong. Yeah, I got it wrong there. Yeah, but I got it wrong right the last 9 times I try it, so it's right.
Yeah,
even though it was wrong that time.
So after City's result against Arsenal, I think just the sheer weight of history meant that everybody said, well, here we go. But this is not that City side. I mean, they're not as liable at the moment to go on a 13-14 match unbeaten run. And similarly, the weight of history was against Arsenal. Oh, here we go. Here comes the implosion. And geez, a goal down against Villa, that felt particularly the case. So what an amazingly interesting Saturday, that in the space of a few hours, something a lot of people felt certain of was turned on its head on both fronts. So for Arsenal, the psychological energy of that afternoon must be incredible. Yeah,
a couple of things to take into account. Arsenal 92 minutes into the game. They've blown it, as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
You know, until, of all people, Jorginho has one from 20 yards. I mean, really? I mean, Chelsea fans waited a long time. I don't know if it's a true stat. I think it probably is. Jorginho's last 22 goals were all from the penalty spot. So he doesn't score. I know that the goal's not given to him. I get that. But, you know, it's kind of his goal, right? So that was well done, but wow, you're pushing it there to say, you know, that was absolutely perfect from Arsenal, right? And exactly the same with City. The total and utter domination and should win the game and then they lose late goal. It's the changeover in how we're all thinking about it in what is only a couple of minutes. And a couple of minutes could easily have gone a different way. I have to say, the Arsenal one, they needed that, because had they lost, you know, the game against Everton, the game against Brentford, then that one, had they not won that, honestly, it didn't matter what happened with Man City. It would have been wheels off City. It would have been wheels off, and they're never going to get back.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Have you subscribed?